Jack Flaherty takes the mound for the Cardinals. Don't know if this is the last time we'll see Jack start a game for St. Louis with the deadline less than a week away. Swing and a miss right on by. Amped up to 94, and Walker couldn't catch up. Breaking ball, cut on and missed. And he gets a swing and a miss. Much easier sequence for Flaherty, who's picked up his third strikeout. He got Carroll to swing and miss. Great sequence for Flaherty, who picks up his fourth strikeout.
Kind of everything's out of my hands, so it makes it a little bit easier if you just understand you control things you can control, which for me was what was going on between the lines today. And everything else just kind of take care of itself.
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. That was Jack Flaherty last night. Solid outing. Not a great one, but a solid outing nonetheless. Better than what we saw yesterday from either Lance Lynn or Marcus Stroman. So all things considered, you'll probably sign up for it for the Cardinals as his platform start going into the trade deadline. Alex, you heard at the beginning of that clip from Chip Carey. We don't know if this is going to be Jack Flaherty's final start in a Cardinals uniform. I think we do. I think we do know that that was absolutely the final time that we are going to see him in a Cardinals uniform. And if it is, and again, we all assume that it is, he will finish his Cardinals career with a 3.6 ERA over 120 starts here in St. Louis. Alex, how will you remember the Jack Flaherty era with the Cardinals?
The ability to be the ace that the Cardinals were searching for, but never able to reach that threshold again. And it's going to feel like it left you wanting more with Jack Flaherty, which is a unfortunate thing to say for a Cardinals team that really has been searching for that ace since Chris Carpenter left. Adam Wainwright was it for a while, but then you were looking for that one in waiting. Michael Wacha potentially, Carlos Martinez potentially, and what we saw in 2019 of Jack Flaherty, it left you wanting more. And then the rest of his career in St. Louis, it sucks for Jack Flaherty. It sucks to be a pro athlete and have to go through something like this where you feel like you hit that point where you were just catapulting to a superstar career, and then it just kind of took some type of unfortunate turn with the injuries, and you never got back to it. So wherever Jack Flaherty goes by next Tuesday, I feel like all of us in St. Louis are going to say, man, we saw that potential for one season, half of another season, but it left you wishing you got more from Jack Flaherty.
Yeah, I feel like it's a giant big what if injuries didn't happen for Jack Flaherty in this time here in St. Louis. And look, I'm always going to remember that 2019 second half because that was incredible watching Jack take the ball every fifth day. And then also the beginning of the 21 season where he was arguably pitching like a Cy Young contender before getting hurt because he was swinging a bat. But I think it's a giant what-if question on Jack Flaherty and his time here in St. Louis. Why are you smiling?
Because what was the conversation that we had before, like moments ago? And what did I tell you were silly about?
I wasn't listening.
Oh, well, yeah, because I half expected to read in the paper this morning that according to sources, the St. Louis Cardinals are looking to extend Jack Flaherty.
Bleep off. No. Bleep off.
I can't even make this stuff up.
Oh, I thought you were getting ready to make fun of me.
No, this is beyond satire.
You got to be bleeping kidding me.
Extension! Woohoo!
No.
It's not done.
Aww.
According to John Denton, Flaherty, who pitched well over 5 innings on Wednesday in Arizona, might not be on his way out of town just yet. The Cardinals are, quote, still holding out hope that an 11th hour long-term extension can be reached before Tuesday, according to John Denton's sources with familiarity of the club's thinking. Despite years of fan speculation that Flaherty would likely jump at his chance to leave St. Louis, the franchise still holds the belief that Flaherty covets the opportunity to pitch for the Cardinals. The two sides have made very little progress towards an extension in recent days, but the Cardinals are expected to make one more contract extension run at Flaherty before the deadline occurs. If that fails, the Cardinals would be forced to deal Flaherty at the deadline.
All right.
Man, we're not moving anybody.
I've got to channel my inner Tanner right now, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
What the bleep is going on? How is this team so bad, and yet they keep adding players to re-sign and bring back next year?
It's amazing.
Every day it's another player that the Cardinals say we can't get rid of him.
I can't even make this stuff up.
It was Tyler O'Neill, and now it's Jordan Hicks, and now it's Jack Flaherty. Are they not trading anybody?
I hope we keep Monty at this point.
Are they seriously bringing back the same team in 2024 and saying, let's run it back?
Are the Cardinals going to be the worst team in history to run it back?
Potentially.
They're going to come out. John will say, like, at the deadline, we're going to go out to the ballpark next week, T-Bone, and he's going to be shouting, 1 more year! 1 more year!
Oh, my God.
I half expect him to walk up the clubhouse steps when we're waiting for him and go, guys, we're doing it again.
As Stu once said in The Hangover, what the bleep is going on?
All right, let's all take a step back. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. From the 314, I'm done. I'm a Reds fan now.
Someone just called us ridiculous. We're ridiculous by seeing this Cardinals team bring the same team back next year?
I think it's really important to note, this isn't fan speculation. This isn't the, like, gossip girls that are on Twitter saying, oh, I think the Cardinals might do X, Y, and Z. Guys, this is coming from notable reporters. We're talking about John Denton.
Who joins the show at 11:30, by the way.
Yeah. Ching, ching, ching. A journalist with a capital J. We're talking about Katie Wu and Derek Gould. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm going to trust their reporting. And if you guys choose not to do so, that's fine. Go ahead and trust the reporting, quote unquote, of the people that you go ahead and follow on Twitter that are telling you that Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado are getting traded. Go ahead. Go do that. That's fine. On this show, we listen to reporters. That's how this works on this specific show on the station. I don't care how anybody else does their work. That's how we do it. And when John Denton reports on Cardinals.com that the Cardinals are considering or trying to extend Jack Flaherty, yeah, that's noteworthy, and we're going to discuss it. So here's my thoughts. That's insane. That is absolutely bat bleep insane.
It's probably below market
for them
value.
to do that.
Where's Ashton Kutcher? Are we getting punked?
So what I don't understand about this, Alex, is like a million different things. But maybe most importantly, Jack Flaherty has serious injury questions still. And even this year where he's been, I would say, solid, he's pitched like a number 3. One of the things that I do have a legitimate question about, and we talked about this a little off air the other day, T-Bone, is, okay, so we're talking all about them going out there and making these moves in the rotation, right? One thing we have to keep in mind, just because you add names does not mean you're improving upon Jack Flaherty and Jordan Montgomery. But that has to be the goal. Going out and getting, for example, a Sonny Gray, if you told me which player is better next year, you asked me that question, Sonny Gray or Jack Flaherty, I would probably bet on Sonny Gray to be the better pitcher in 2024 than Jack Flaherty. Now, if you ask me which one's going to get paid more on the open market, considering their ages and whatnot, I would say probably Jack Flaherty. So I would rather just go ahead and hold my hand here, trade these guys at the deadline, get those assets that I'm able to get in return for them at this year's trade deadline, and then go into the offseason and make my decisions. And maybe you still end up re-signing Jack Flaherty because you deem him to be the best option for the money that is required. That's fine. At that point in time, go ahead and make whatever is the best decision for your organization. I would be surprised if that is it, but neither here nor there. Right now, this would be a legitimately shocking decision. And for anybody saying, oh, guys, this is just them playing their leverage card, what leverage? What leverage?
Oh, you know what? Maybe the Dodgers, they want to re-sign him to a long-term contract extension, so now I'm going to give you our best players.
They get nothing out of this. Honestly, nothing.
Well, they get Jack Flaherty out of this.
Sure, but I'm saying, like, in terms of leverage at the trade market. The idea that this is them leveraging other teams, no, it's not. This is them trying to re-sign a player that they value. And I think that's insane.
But why do we value him?
Because he's a really solid starting pitcher in Major League Baseball.
That's great, but you've had him for the last 5 seasons, and you haven't gone anywhere with him.
Yeah, before I saw this piece, and thanks to the text line for pointing it out to me, I hadn't seen it, honestly. It posted just a little while ago. Before I saw this piece, my answer to the question of how are we going to remember the Jack Flaherty era was what could have been. I feel like that was the headline of the Jack Flaherty era. What could have been?
You don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, you get to find out.
Yeah, you get to find out for the next probably 5 to 7 years.
But what's left unsaid when I say what could have been is what never was.
Oh.
And I guess what still could be is the addendum to that. I don't get it.
Here's the thing. Go ahead.
My fear is that they're going to say, hey, look, Jack, this was his first full season back. let's run it back with him, and he's going to be the guy that anchors the top of the rotation.
Yeah, because the 32 starts that he had over the last 3 years isn't a sign of what's to come for the next 5 years.
This is a guy that they've put a lot in terms of he is the ace.
But he's not. He hasn't been.
But now, I agree.
There's
with what you're saying.
aces available on the market.
But I think what they'll do is they'll say, you take out those, whatever it is, the 2-3 starts that were big blow-ups. His ERA's in the 3s.
I take out those 4 years of high school where I sucked at school. I could be a doctor.
No, you couldn't.
Alex, I do think what Tanner's saying here is probably an important way to look at this. Like, what is the devil's advocate here? Because the Cardinals, despite all of the action suggesting otherwise, are not stupid. And so there's going to be a team that is going to spend significant money on Jack Flaherty this offseason. So whether it's the Cardinals or somebody else, somebody is going to talk themselves into what Jack Flaherty could be. And if the Cardinals are doing that internally right now, I would assume what is informing that decision is looking back to May 5th. Jack Flaherty has thrown 75 innings and has a 3.5 ERA. And they're probably asking themselves right now, did he flip the switch? And if so, is this the pitcher that he's going to be? And if this is the pitcher that he's going to be, can we find somebody better on the open market for less? And if they say, this is the best guy we're going to get for the amount of money we're willing to spend, that's how you talk yourself into this. Now, here's the problem. If this is the best guy for the money they're willing to spend, then they're not willing to spend enough money. That's where I would switch my gears on this. But if they're bringing back Jack Flaherty and they plan to add Lucas Giolito, or they plan to add the guy from Japan, or Blake Snell, or somebody like that, and that's going to be the front end of your rotation, and you're basically upgrading from Monty to the other guys that we're talking about, I could see how you could get there.
Yeah, but I'm not buying that. I'm buying this as the Cardinals look at this and say, well, we really weren't going to get a Nola or a Snell in free agency because they were going to cost too much to be an ace. We've got an ace that might be willing to sign for less here. So now let's just go get a middle of the rotation guy that we can throw in a couple of depth pieces and say, hey, Flaherty and Michaelis are our 1-2 punch next year, but you've had Flaherty and Michaelis as your 1-2 punch for the last 3 years.
So somebody on the text line says, you guys just want to make a trade for the sake of making a deal. You don't know what other teams are offering in order to make that argument. So let's go ahead and have this discussion real quick. You know what? Let's get to it on the other side. We saw a trade yesterday take place in Major League Baseball for a rental starter and a rental reliever. That deal brought back 2 of the top prospects in the Angels organization. Would you have accepted that deal, or would you rather re-sign Jack Flaherty? We're going to get into that conversation. I want to hear from you guys as well on the Mic Drop feature on the 101 ESPN app. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN.
Details. Get entered to win those free tickets for Disturbed and Breaking Benjamin now, either at 101ESPN.com or on your 101 mobile app.
Giving you the picture, the real big St. Louis sports picture. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN.
So we missed the open. Here's the news that we're reacting to. This comes from John Denton, who's going to be joining us here in a little more than 10 minutes on BK and Ferrario. Jack Flaherty, who pitched well yesterday, might not be on his way out of St. Louis just yet. The Cardinals are still holding out hope, according to John Denton, that an 11th hour long-term extension could be reached before the Tuesday trade deadline. He continues, despite years of fan speculation that Flaherty would likely jump at the first chance to leave St. Louis, the franchise is still of the belief that Flaherty covets the opportunity to pitch for the Cardinals. The two sides have made very little progress towards an extension in recent days, but the Cardinals are expected to make one final contract extension run at Flaherty prior to the deadline, and if that fails, the Cardinals would then be forced to deal Jack Flaherty. Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. This is the news that we're reacting to. Again, that all coming from the Cardinals insider for MLB.com, John Denton. Alex, I'm pretty shocked by this. I got to be honest with you. I thought we all kind of assumed if there was any player that was likely to be dealt at the deadline, I would say number one on that list for me was Jordan Montgomery. Number two, though, would have been Jack Flaherty. I thought even if they decide, you know what, the offers just aren't there for the other guys that are on our list right now, we got to find a way to maximize the return for these two starting rentals in a market that has very few starting pitching options available. So let's go back to what the news was last night. I thought this was going to be our big Jack Flaherty story today. The Angels decided to trade for Lucas Giolito. They did so in a package deal with the White Sox that also included Reynaldo Lopez, who is a rental reliever who's kind of in like the, you could argue, Chris Stratton mold. Maybe it's more the Jordan Hicks role. It's probably somewhere in between those two players, but this would be like packaging Jack Flaherty and one of your rental relievers going to another team. In return, they got back a legit catching prospect and then a pitcher who previously was a big-time starting pitching prospect, but like all pitching prospects, he has really fallen off a cliff this year. He's got a 7 ERA at AA. He's been so bad that they sent him down to instructionals for a little while to try to find his stuff again.
He's dealing with an oblique and groin injury.
He's a big lefty that's got some promise, so there's real reason for optimism there, even though the results have not been there this year. So they got the number two of the top three prospects in the Angels system is what they got in return for Lucas Giolito and Reynaldo Lopez. I say that, Alex, because I think that is a really important backdrop to the conversation that we're having right now. We had somebody on the text line that said, hey, you guys just want to make a deal to make a deal. You don't even know what the return would be. Well, this is a pretty good starting point on what a return could be for a Jack Flaherty. Would that give you pause about extending Flaherty right now if you're giving up on the potential of getting two prospects that are the equivalent in another system of what Ivan Herrera and Michael McGreevy are right now for the Cardinals? That's basically what they got in return.
I mean, yeah, it gives you pause because that's not equivalent to what Jack Flaherty is if you're able to re-sign him, but then I would power through that pause and say, okay, but let's be realistic. Jack Flaherty has not been what we needed him to be for the last 3 seasons for us. And these players that we're getting in return are controllable assets. And yeah, you know what? They're probably not going to be as effective in 2024 as Jack Flaherty could be for you. But I'm not just making a trade to make a trade. I'm making a trade because the core that I have had in place for the last 4 seasons has not gotten the job done. And me running it back for another year and saying, well, it just didn't work out well this season. Let's see what they could do it next year. Doesn't make sense. Yeah, I'm trading Jack Flaherty and not getting guys back that can help in 2024, but I'm also opening up a spot that I could force myself to go after somebody who is the model of consistency in my rotation. That's why I want them to make the trade. Here's the other factor into it, too. That's one trade that took place, and it's a name that's pretty high up on the starting pitching board that was traded last night. Yeah. That means there are more buying teams that need starting pitching help that could get desperate. And guess who's got two of the best arms in terms of the rotation available between now and Tuesday? Because to me, when there are a lot of teams and not a lot of starting pitchers that feel like they can help my roster make a playoff run, that's going to up the ante a little bit. So it doesn't make sense extending Jack Flaherty here. Regardless of the name that you're getting back, I think there needs to be a change in the rotation, and bringing the same guy back doesn't do that.
So let me play devil's advocate for a minute, because you guys know I agree with you. Obviously, we're all on the same page here. I think it would be a mistake looking back for them to go this route. But let me put my Mobo tie on here for a second. Let me play devil's advocate on why maybe it could make sense for the Cardinals to go ahead and do this instead of getting those prospects back. What's the likelihood of Kai Busch or Edgar Quero becoming legitimate major league impact starters for their team? The catcher prospect and the left-handed pitcher that the Angels just gave up in this deal. What's the likelihood of that happening?
I don't know what I would put the percentage at. Below.
I mean, it's below 50%.
Yeah, that's probably below.
It's a
30.
prospect.
I think the guy that has the most hope in that deal is the catcher, because he's a bat and the pitcher's hurt, and once you start dealing with injuries, things go south.
But remind
quickly.
people that was an area that the White Sox needed.
Sure.
It's not just that that's all they were willing to give. The White Sox needed a catcher. The Cardinals need starting pitching.
So if I told you they get back a pitching equivalent to this Quero guy, the catching prospect.
Wouldn't that be
Angels
like a Clayton Beater from the New York Yankees?
Sure. Let's go that route. Do you feel like that overwhelmingly changes your rotation?
Overwhelmingly? No, but it opens up a spot. It opens up money for me to address that with somebody else.
Now, let me ask a follow-up question. What if I can get that same level prospect for Montgomery in a deal? And I'm keeping Jack Flaherty. And I'm not slotting Jack Flaherty into my number 1 spot next year. Again, this is all hypothetical. I'm slotting Jack Flaherty into my number 2.
Yeah, now you took your bow tie
Now I know
off,
you
buddy.
took off your bow tie.
Well, they said the model's going to change, so at some point you've got to change something
It's
about the team.
obviously not changing.
But what if walk down this lane with me, this yellow brick road, if you will. Because
right,
clearly
Dorothy.
it's fantasy land. What if Jack Flaherty slotted in as your number 2? Miles Michaelis is your number 3. Steven Matz is your number 5. And we're going to go get that number 4 starter. Maybe it's like a Clark Schmidt type, right? Somebody like that. So maybe even somebody a little better on the free agent. Maybe it's James Paxton.
Ooh.
And we're going to go out there and we're going to get that number 1 starter this offseason. Or maybe they trade for Logan Gilbert, right? Like maybe they are really going after this thing and they're getting the cost-controlled starter from Seattle. And I'm re-signing Jack Flaherty. And I'm going out there and I'm getting that number 1 starter you guys are craving. Now, how do you feel?
Better. Much better.
Does that change some things for
Very
you?
optimistic about it, but
Because I think the end result could alter the way that we view the starting point here at this trade deadline. I think what the Cardinals are doing right now is this is actually the offseason for the Cardinals. It starts today. And the rest of the offseason, obviously, is still to be seen what they do.
oh god,
and I
Mo's
think
going on vacation as soon as the postseason's
and
over.
this is why there's so much pressure on John Mozeliak, maybe more so than at any point in his career here in St. Louis. The end result will ultimately dictate how we feel about these first decisions.
Yep.
And that's scary for Mo because we have seen in the past the end result doesn't typically go as he anticipates. The market changes in one way or another that he didn't forecast. The market changed on him on Adam Eaton. The market changed on him in the bullpen market when he decided to jump it with Brett Cecil a few years ago. The market changed on him last year with Sean Murphy, where the asking price was way higher. The market changed on him when he wanted Giancarlo Stanton or Christian Yelich, and he ended up with Marcell Ozuna. So these things change really quickly, and Mo is sometimes slow to adjust, or maybe even too rapid to adjust. So it takes a lot for him to end up being right on this. But if he is actually willing to go out there and change the model and pay the freight for that number 1 starter, there is a way that you can talk yourself into this decision, but it takes a lot to be able to take that leap of faith that he's actually going to make the move that is necessary to make this work.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think you can talk yourself into it. I guess then my question is, are you still trying to upgrade from Monty and Jack, or are you just trying to upgrade from one? My answer would be I would want to upgrade from probably both. And that's why I would at least really consider those offer. Like, you had the question of, do I get to keep Jack and get the same kind of package for Monty? Well, I guess my counterpoint would be we'll get both packages and then look to upgrade from both of them.
Or sign one of them in the offseason after you get those packages.
So I guess
and still make the trade for Logan Gilbert.
That's the way I view it. Like I understand what you're saying, and I will definitely feel better about it once we kind of, because right now we're at point A and we're still waiting to get to point Z. But I would feel much better about it, I think, right now in terms of, okay, they're trying to upgrade from Monty and Jack, because this isn't a one-off with this like this is a all-time, not an all-time bad. This is a disaster of a season. Where's it going to start at? It starts with the bullpen and in the rotation. And if that's the case, I don't really want to run it back with any of those pieces that are involved. Like, I would be moving Jordan Hicks for pieces that I can get and revamp the bullpen on the fly. I would be looking to upgrade from Jordan Montgomery and Jack Flaherty. I understand what you're saying of, okay, you get Jack and then you just look to upgrade over Monty. I think the way that this season has gone, they need to be looking to upgrade over both.
Here's my concern, and this is where the skepticism is coming into play and, frankly, being frustrated. You're going to sign Jack Flaherty, I would imagine, to a significant contract that's going to be somewhere between 20 and 25 AAV, because Jack Flaherty ain't signing for less. They're going to say, well, that's the top-end guy that we would have had to pay on the market, and we got it cheaper because otherwise we would have had to pay $30 or more million. We'll go get ourselves somebody who can slot into the middle. We've got Jack, Miles Michaelis, Steven Matz showed promise, and we'll add some depth. And now what we resolved is the issue we had this year, where our top guys were great. It was the depth the problem, and they're just going to add some depth signing pieces and say, now we can put this roster out there and be comfortable with it.
Let's get some more insight into all of this. Our conversation has been informed by the reporting of John Denton. John Denton is the Cardinals insider for MLB.com, and he's going to join us on the show coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Coverage of 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendricks here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. The Cardinals took down Arizona yesterday 11-7 as they take 2 of 3 from the Diamondbacks, and they return home tonight to start a 4-game set against the Chicago Cubs. 6:45 will be first pitch today as Justin Steele gets to start for the Cubs. Miles Michaelis is on the mound for St. Louis. The Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff. Find your road shop 24/7 at londoff.com, londoffAutoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
Right back to more of it. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN.
Before we came on the air, John Denton, an excerpt from his newsletter was posted on Cardinals.com on which Cardinals are most likely to be moved at the trade deadline. In that piece, he wrote the following: Jack Flaherty might not be out of town just yet. The Cardinals are still holding out hope that an 11th hour long-term extension can be reached before the Tuesday trade deadline. That is according to a source with familiarity of the club's thinking to John Denton. And John Denton joins us now via the 101 ESPN hotline. John, that is not something that I was anticipating waking up to today. Appreciate the time as always, my friend. Can you expand on your report? What is the latest that you are hearing on Jack Flaherty and the potential of him actually staying in St. Louis long term?
Yeah, guys, thanks for having me. I think the Cardinals are scared to death of going into the offseason needing 3 pitchers. You don't want to have to go into free agency needing 3 pitchers. They would like to maybe keep one of these guys. I think they know deep down in their heart that Jordan Montgomery's going to be a free agent, wants to be a free agent, wants to get max value. They think there might be a chance to talk Jack Flaherty into staying. Now, there's been 0 progress. I was told there hasn't even been an offer made, but the Cardinals are hoping to maybe use the deadline in their favor. I think, I've been told they want him back. He's the one that they think they could hang on to. He's the one they covet. If a deal could be worked out between now and the deadline, I think both sides would be happy. The further down the road we get, the closer we get to the deadline, the less likely that's going to happen. But I do think the Cardinals will probably come in with an 11th hour offer for Jack and see if there's a way to keep him, because they don't want to go into free agency needing 3 pitchers.
John, I think this is probably a difficult question to answer, and I want to say that on the front end, so if I'm putting you in a bad spot, I apologize. But when the Cardinals think about what that rotation would look like in 2024 if Jack Flaherty were to re-sign, do you think they envision Jack being at the top of that rotation again, or do you think their ideal scenario would be we acquire another pitcher that slots in ahead of Jack Flaherty, and he is like a 2 or 3 for the Cardinals in 2024?
Yeah, Brent, not to straddle the fence, but it depends on what they could get, I mean, if you can't get a number 1, maybe Jack is your number 1. He definitely has that ability. Can he be that consistent again? Can he be that dominant again? If they bring him back here, it's going to be for big money. They're probably going to have to pay him like an ace to get him to re-up an extension now or to sign in free agency. I think, it's all dependent. Can you go get another ace? If you can't, Jack could be your number 1. Like I said, there's been no offer made yet to Jack, but I do know the Cardinals want to try to make an 11th hour stab to try to keep him here. They value him. They want him here. I think they know that Jordan Montgomery's going to look elsewhere. It's going to take the maximum amount of dollars to sign him. They think Jack is one that they might be able to hang on and keep here. But like I said, the closer it gets to the deadline, the less likely it is to happen, because deals don't come together overnight. They usually take a couple of days.
John, over the last couple of weeks, really, we've started to hear more and more names following the Cardinals saying that they were going to be selling and their focus was on improving for 2024. And since then, we've heard names that have basically been told to other teams, no, they're not available. And now contract extensions for Jordan Hicks potentially and for Jack Flaherty potentially. Do you feel like the Cardinals are making the right decisions going into this trade deadline for 2024?
Well, there's so much of this is posturing. So much of this is, they're not available, so you better up your offer. They might be available if you up your offer. Like right now, with what you're currently offering, they're not available. But, that could change. There's posturing that goes on. There's lies that goes on. There's, poker bluffs that are going on every day. And just because the guy's not available today doesn't mean he won't be available tomorrow. So a lot of times when you hear taking a guy off the market or he's not available, that just means come at me with a better offer. I think a lot of that's going on. Maybe Tyler O'Neill's not available today. Maybe they're going to hang on to him today, but that doesn't mean if a team ups the value of a pitcher they're going to give the Cardinals that wouldn't change tomorrow. So this is, very fluid, a lot of poker being played on both sides.
I was told the other day, John, by somebody not with the Cardinals, but on the other side of the informed conversations from the other side of these discussions, that the Cardinals are, quote, saying none of their guys are available, end quote. They then added that, of course, they're talking about all of the guys that we don't want to trade here in St. Louis. So the Gormans, the Donovans, et cetera. How do you think the Cardinals view their current left-handed bats in terms of availability?
I think I think Nolan Gorman is close to untouchable. They did not want to trade him last year. They could have had Sean Murphy, but, Nolan Gorman would be hitting all these home runs now in Oakland instead of St. Louis. He is as close to untouchable. Obviously you're not trading Paul Goldschmidt. You're not trading Nolan Arenado. You're not trading Jordan Walker. But I would say I would put him probably fourth on that list of players you're just not going to trade. I think they could be talked into trading Lars Nootbaar. He's a guy they love. Every teammate, everybody in the clubhouse loves Lars Nootbaar. His infectious personality, the way he plays the game, they all love him. But if a team were to blow them away, I think they could look to move him. But I would say that it's highly, highly unlikely that they would move Nolan Gorman. They do not want to trade him and see him go hit 40 home runs for another team.
So if that's the case, John, and we've heard how much they do really want to keep Brendan Donovan, you mentioned Lars Nootbaar. We know Dylan Carlson's name's been floated out there. Can you see this team upgrading for 2024 via the trade deadline, or is this just still going to be a wait and see until the offseason thing for the Cardinals?
I think they could upgrade in terms of inches and not miles. I think this could be a two-reliever type thing, a seventh inning, eighth inning guy. Maybe you add two more arms to the bullpen. It's not going to be sexy. It's not going to blow fans away, but it could help you. It could even help you now, and it could help you in 2024. Fans want to go see the Cardinals go land an ace. Well, if you do that, it's going to involve Nolan Gorman. It's going to involve Brendan Donovan. It's going to involve, pieces that really hurt. May involve Mason Wynn. If you want that kind of level pitcher, that's why I think it's going to be like a seventh, eighth inning guy. They know they have to restock their bullpen. They know they have to basically tear it down and start over. Maybe you come out of a trade with two good arms out of the bullpen. I know that's not sexy, but I think that's more likely than landing an ace at the deadline.
John Denton is our guest for just another couple of minutes here on 101 ESPN. We always appreciate him joining us on the show. John, what is your understanding of the current situation? You mentioned the bullpen with Ryan Helsley and Jordan Hicks.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised by this, but I think from what I've been told, the organization values Jordan Hicks a lot more than they do Ryan Helsley. The Helsley's injury history, his unhappiness with the way the arbitration went this past offseason, they value Hicks more than they do Helsley right now. He's the one that they would like to keep. And kind of like with Jack, I think they're going to make one more run at him. A lot of teams use the deadline to try to use the deadline to their advantage. I would not be shocked if they don't offer Jordan Hicks an extension in the next day or so and use the deadline to their advantage. But as far as what I'm told from the organization's perspective, they value Jordan Hicks more than they do Ryan Helsley, which, I kind of raise an eyebrow at that because Hicks has had a wild, all over the place season. He obviously has the stuff, he has the talent, but if one of those two go, I think it will most likely be Helsley, but it could be Hicks if they can't work something out between now and the deadline.
Do you think the Cardinals have learned anything about their arbitration handling based upon what we've seen over the last couple of years? You just mentioned it frustrated Ryan Helsley. We certainly knew a little bit about that. Last year, we saw what happened with Tyler O'Neill and how that impacted his season. Are the Cardinals, do you think, should they change their approach to arbitration hearings based upon what we have seen happen in season with some of those players over the last couple of years?
Yeah, Brandon, I think they've got to look at their model in whole. There's the model, the way they spend on pitchers, the model, the way they handle arbitration. Like, arbitration has such a lingering effect. It gives the guys feelings of bitterness. It creates this bad ill will between the two clubs. And, I get that you want to sign a guy at market value. You don't want to overpay for a guy. But it creates so much animosity between the club. And I do think the Cardinals need to take a strong look at that, just the way they need to take a strong look at how they pay pitchers, how they evaluate prospects. There's a lot of things that they need to put into that hopper of things that need to be reevaluated because, Tyler O'Neill was crushed last year when he didn't work out an extension, and Ryan Helsley, it's taken him quite a long time to get over what went on in the arbitration process this past offseason. So I would put it in the list of many things that the Cardinals need to reevaluate.
John, we'll get you out of here on this. I know you were very high on the young Dylan Carlson. Who's he going to be an all-star for next year?
I've heard Yankees. I've heard Yankees. That's what Mark Feinsand of MLB has heard the same thing as well. And, like I said, this is Randy Arozarena, Adolis Garcia all over again. Their biggest fear is they trade Dylan Carlson to the Kansas City Royals and he hits 25 home runs next year. I think everybody in St. Louis can see the talent there. Dylan just has to hit the ball better from the left side of the plate. He has had a lot more at-bats than Randy Arozarena had. He's had a lot more at-bats than Adolis Garcia. When you pull the trigger, I listened to your guys' interview with Al Avila the other day. Knowing when to pull a trigger on a guy is, that's a big-time skill. And, the Cardinals are scared to death that they deal Dylan and he blows up somewhere else.
At least we've never seen that happen before.
Doesn't happen here, John.
Hey, John, appreciate the time, man. Great reporting over at Cardinals.com. We'll be following all of your work there, certainly, and at John Denton 555 on Twitter as well. Thanks for joining us today and being flexible with your time. We'll talk with you again soon, my friend.
All right, sounds good, guys. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, That's John Denton, the great reporter for Cardinals.com, joins us every other week here on BK and Ferrario. And when he's not joining us, he's joining the balloon party. So you've got him weekly here on 101 ESPN.
He said something interesting there with Helsley and Hicks. Do you feel like the Cardinals make a mistake if they trade Helsley and keep Hicks? Because I do.
If you're telling me, here's my option. Option one, I have an erratic reliever who has some injury history but is cost controlled for a reasonable price for next year. Option two, I have an erratic reliever who has an injury history who I'm paying $10 million for each of the next 3 years on a fully guaranteed contract.
You go with the $10 million and fully guaranteed.
Yeah, I'm keeping Ryan Helsley. I think that's pretty simple.
As soon as he said that screams Hicks injured next year or loses his closer job and they're left upstream without a paddle and Ryan Helsley's closing for the Tampa Bay Rays.
Correct answer is you probably trade both.
Well, you don't like bullpen arms.
Well, no, but I mean, if you want to get significant value, one, Jordan Hicks a pending free agent. I wouldn't give him the contract that they're supposedly talking to him about, which we assume is around the 3 years to $30-40 million range. I wouldn't give a bullpen arm that unless he's proven has a long track record of success. Hicks does not. And then I look at Ryan Helsley and I look at, to BK's point, a piece that clearly Major League Baseball still values, has control. Well, what do teams really value at the deadline? Sure, they like starters. They love bullpen arms, and they love them if they've got control. He's the kind of guy that would seriously bring back a significant haul if you were willing to trade him.
Yeah, but if you have to keep one, I'm keeping Helsley. And frankly, I would be trading a Gallegos and a Hicks just to keep Helsley.
So Helsley's probably going to cost you $5 million next year because of his arbitration eligibility, and he's not a free agent until 2026.
Yeah, that's how you keep a winning window open.
And he's just cheaper. And I understand that, yes, he is absolutely erratic, and there are real injury questions with Ryan Helsley. Guys, are we just pretending like those don't exist with Jordan Hicks?
I was going to say, he's never thrown a ball into the second row in Miami.
And forget that.
What?
The injury history with Jordan Hicks is legitimate, man. All of these guys, every bullpen arm, you have to assume there is real fragility there. Because that's how it works with the bullpen arms. Now, I think one thing that they get frustrated with Ryan Helsley, in fact, we know this, they get frustrated by his unwillingness to take the ball when they need him to.
Yeah, well,
sometimes.
they get frustrated when Tyler O'Neill dogs it, but then they said we're not going to trade him.
But Jordan Hicks is willing to take the ball. We remember very recently, went 3 straight days, right? That is something that you would never see from Ryan Helsley. So I think the makeup is probably what they're betting on with Jordan Hicks, and I do understand that. I really do. But I think sometimes we get overconfident in our own evaluations of players, whether it's us here on the show or the Cardinals. They think they're right. And they are saying, we are right, and we will make this bet on player X, right? Well, sometimes you're not. as we have seen, they were wrong on Randy Arozarena. They were wrong on Adolis Garcia. They were wrong on some of their internal guys that they bet on. They were wrong on Wilson Contreras and whether or not they were going to be able to fix him going into this season. So them feeling like they are 100% correct on what Ryan Helsley is and will be, and feeling the exact same way with Jordan Hicks, like I think that is a bad way to operate. And Alex, since the start of the 2021 season, I'm going to give you two different stat lines, all right? You tell me player A or player B.
Low bacon versus FIP. Let's go.
This is not any advanced numbers whatsoever. Player A appeared in 127 games through 137 innings and had a 2.7 ERA. 27 games, 137 innings, 2.7 ERA. Player B appeared in 85 games, 113 innings, 4.5 ERA.
Well, I know who player B is.
Which one do you prefer?
Yeah, I'm taking the first one.
That's the guy that is cheaper and cost controlled, and that's Ryan Helsley. It's weird,
to
man.
To be fair, they used Hicks as a starter when they shouldn't have. Otherwise, his ERA would be close to that.
Someone said, someone said, Alex Helsley blew the postseason game last year. Let's not worry about a bad throw and a bad season. Yeah, but he has a blister, so that's fine. We overlooked that right there. They are doing, to me, exactly what Al Avila told us earlier in the week, like John Denton just mentioned. The Cardinals seem to be looking at their prospects the wrong way, and other teams are evaluating prospects better than the Cardinals have. And that is not a way to build a successful winning team.
So, final thing that I wanted to get to in reaction from our interview with John Denton, he also added this. He said the Cardinals are scared to death of the possibility that they would have to add 3 starters in the offseason.
Why?
No. That's not the correct reaction, in my opinion. The correct reaction is that is a problem of your own making. They knew this. This is not a surprise. They had questions asked about this going into the season. Hey, John, are you comfortable with the fact that you have Adam Wainwright, Jack Flaherty, and Jordan Montgomery entering the season on expiring deals, and the fact that you're going to have to replace those guys in the free agency market potentially next year? His answer was, yes, we're comfortable with that. And now they're not. That is on Mo, dude. He created this problem. And if you're scared now and that is leading you to another desperate decision, that's you. That's your fault. You have nobody to blame but yourself if you are now terrified of that possibility. Because it wasn't just a possibility, it was a certainty. This is what was going to happen no matter what this year. So the fact that that's what's leading to some of these decisions, or this fear going into the deadline of giving up on your current starters, this was always the likely outcome.
And you know why? My answer
baffling.
to that is, why are you scared? Because this can be fixed if you're willing to part with some of these important pieces on your roster. But you stating every day that, well, this guy's unavailable and that guy's unavailable. And maybe John's right. Maybe this is jockeying, and maybe this is just the poker game that goes on between general managers. But if this was another team, I'd buy that. But the Cardinals stating that he's untouchable means that that guy's untouchable and they're not willing to trade. You can fix this by trading a Donovan or a Gorman or a Carlson or a Nootbaar, but you're unwilling to do it.
I'm all about
not only that,
logic and reason.
Model.
One thing real quick. I'm all about logic and reason, guys. That's it. That's how my mind works. And for the most part, the Cardinals organization has operated that way as well. Logic and reason. And you can disagree with the decisions that they make. There's been some of them that I have disagreed with. But I can always, for the most part, understand the logic as to how they arrived at that decision. This year, their decision-making has not applied any logic or reason to any of them. It looks like a team that is flailing in the wind with no direction. And that's what concerns me most, is for the first time since I have moved here, which goes back to 2015. So we're talking about an 8-year stretch here, but I'm sure for you Cardinals fans, this really goes back even further than that, 20 years. I can't remember the organization operating like this at any point in time in my memory. This is
panicking. They're panicking
at all
times.
They
don't know what to do when they panic.
Sorry, T-Bone, I cut you off there.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, not only is it, if you're looking at these 3 holes and you're terrified, one, trade some of these pieces that we're talking about to go get a controllable arm, but also that seems to signal that they don't really they say change the model. I don't see the model changing if they're panicked about spending on 3 pitchers. Why? Because it's going to cost money to get those pitchers. And if you're afraid to get 3 pitchers in the offseason, well, that tells me you're unwilling to spend the dollars to go get them. Now, maybe they're looking at it as, we get a cost control arm, maybe we get Jack below market value, and then maybe we're able to go out there and get like a Sonny Gray. But I'm kind of skeptical of that, because if you're terrified of 3 spots, I don't think you're like going to be necessarily that open, the 2 spots going in the offseason. I still think you're going to go from terrified to scared. I just don't understand the unwillingness, because to me that says the model is not changing.
Coming up next, we're going to get into some questions and answers. We're going to do it rapid fire style here on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's BK. Do you remember that childhood piggy bank that you had? All the satisfaction that you felt as you were finally able to reap the rewards of your diligent savings? Well, with Truehold, you can access your biggest piggy bank heck yet, your home's equity. You'll start enjoying your retirement that you plan for right now without even having to move. Here's how you do it. Truehold will buy your home for its best current value while that remains high, and you get to bank all the cash now while you continue living in your home for as long as you'd like. Plus, Truehold will cover all the property taxes, insurance, repairs, and maintenance too. And since they pay your home's current value in cash, that money is yours to do whatever you'd like with. So start enjoying your home's equity while it remains high by visiting Truehold.com, and you'll discover how much they'll buy your home for today based on its best current value. To do so, call 1-855-300-9993, or you can visit Truehold.com for the smarter and faster way to cash out on your home's full value without having to move. That's 1-855-300-9993, or you can visit Truehold.com. Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. We went really long with John Denton. I felt like it was important to do so because of how much news came out of that discussion. If you missed it, check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where to go to find it. It's all presented by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers. But because of that, we got to go rapid fire with questions and answers. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Guys, if you had to trade one of the following two, who would you deal? Tyler O'Neill or Dylan Carlson?
I would trade Tyler O'Neill because I know exactly what he is, and it's unavailable. And at least Dylan Carlson is available.
Yeah, I would trade O'Neill. Even though I think you could get more for Carlson, I would trade Tyler O'Neill because of what you just said.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Guys, if you had to guarantee that the Cardinals will make a trade with one team at this year's trade deadline, who would it be?
Yankees.
Same.
Especially if Flaherty's not going to be traded.
Yeah, I think Yankees. I think there's a deal for Montgomery, Carlson, and a bullpen arm to go to the Yankees.
Oh, I would go like one of the... I would say if you're making a deal with the Yankees for a starter, I do not think it's going to be Jordan Montgomery.
I don't know. I mean, they're looking for pitching.
Yeah, they probably are just like.
I don't know how Cashman does.
I mean, they said last year Montgomery's not good enough to make our playoff rotation.
But the Blues said Sammy Blais wasn't good enough to be on our team, and then they just got him back at the deadline.
Fair enough. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Guys, who do you think will be the leading goal scorer for the Blues in 2023?
Kyrou.
I'd say Kyrou.
I think your top three will be Kyrou, Buchnevich, and Verana.
I think Verana finishes second.
I do too. We're on the same page there.
Only way he does is if Buchnevich is injured.
I think
Buch will have more points.
I think Buch is going to be a 30-goal scorer this year.
I like that. I think Verana's going to have a huge year on the power play. And I think that's how he ends up.
I hope he makes the first power play unit.
Well, we'll see. From the 636, final thing here. Guys, would you trade Tommy Edman if another team is comfortable with his health at this year's trade deadline?
Yes.
I don't know what Tommy Edman's future is here. Yeah. I think I need to know that first.
Super utility.
What's his position?
Super
Center
utility.
Field. I think the Cardinals view him as their center fielder going into next year.
That's a mistake. But
if they view him as their center fielder, then no, I wouldn't trade him. And I'm operating through the Cardinals prism, right? I am on the outside looking in. Yes, my answer would be I would trade him. But from the Cardinals' perspective, if they think he's their future center fielder, no, you don't trade him.
Yeah, I'm kind of along the same lines. The Cardinals, I think, view him as the center fielder going into next year, so I can't see that moving. But I would I've said this all along. I'd be listening to a lot of offers on a lot of players and see what I could get for him.
I would trade him because I don't view him as a center fielder, or I wouldn't trade him, but I view him more as the super utility guy, which is going to be able to provide me the ability to trade one of Donovan, Nootbaar, or Gorman.
That's fair. Coming up next, speaking of Nolan Gorman, is he more valuable to the Cardinals as a franchise cornerstone piece or as a trade chip that gets them the starting pitcher that they crave? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Catch the balloon. St. Louis. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN.
Gorman's an interesting fit because they might view him better from a let's say a DH / second base type, right, than maybe how he's looked this year so far defensively. But I think you might have to go that route, and Gorman would have to be one of the. I would more tend to focus on that. I don't think that again, I go back to Newtbar. I'm not seeing as much value there because he hasn't had quite the season I thought he would.
That was Jim Duquette on with us yesterday. If you missed the conversation, be sure to check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. Alex, Nolan Gorman is a name that we are going to have to spotlight going into this year's trade deadline. And I know the immediate avalanche of texts that we are about to receive on the text line, 314-399-9646 is the Your Comfort Service text line, is going to say, you do not trade a guy like Nolan Gorman that's going to hit 35 to 40 bombs for you. And I get it. In a typical season for a typical team, I wouldn't even think about it. He would be considered an untouchable to me. But it feels like everybody that reports on the Cardinals has a different view on how the Cardinals see Nolan Gorman leading into the trade deadline. John Denton told us earlier he thinks he's the fourth most untouchable player on the roster other than Goldie, Arenado, and Walker. He said Gorman would be the next name on that list in his opinion. Derek Gould wrote this yesterday in his chat. Quote, the Cardinals see him as perhaps their biggest trade chip to move from the standout, ready now established starters of their wishes. Seattle's in play, though again, I don't have a feel for how interested the Mariners are. We will talk to a Seattle sports reporter, Mike Salk, coming up here in about 10 minutes or so to find out who the Mariners would be interested in. But, Alex, let's have this discussion because I think it's time. Nolan Gorman is a really good young player. He is a guy that could hit 35-plus home runs for you on any given season. I think he's Kyle Schwarber 2.0. That's a really nice piece to have that on the free agent market, man, you're paying that guy $20-plus million per year to be in the middle of your order. But he's also a guy that strikes out a lot. He is going to be prone to slumps in the middle of the season, the way that we saw in the month of June, but he has snapped out of that, and he's been very good recently. Important disclaimer there. And he plays solid defense at second base, but he's probably best served as a third baseman. Alex, when you think about Nolan Gorman and what you could get for him, maybe it's a Logan Gilbert or one of the other young starters on the Seattle Mariners. That's kind of the team that we're going to focus in on here. Is he more valuable to you as a franchise cornerstone or as a trade chip right now?
To me, he's more valuable as a trade chip because right now you need a franchise cornerstone pitcher in your top three of your rotation because it's not in your system. And if it is in your system, i.e. Tink Hence, you're waiting a few more years. And it's not going to be one of these guys, you re-signing Jack Flaherty or Jordan Montgomery. And frankly, it's not Michaelis or Steven Matz. And as much as I love Nolan Gorman's offense and power, and as much as I would agree with John Denton, because to me it would be probably Brendan Donovan / Nolan Gorman as that fourth most valuable player to not trade, I also look at the landscape of this Cardinals team and recognize that you're not going to get any of these free agents that you think you're going to get because you're going into a bidding war with some of the top dogs. And frankly, we know how the Cardinals history goes against bidding against other teams for free agent pitchers. And you're not acquiring a 1, 2, or 3 with anybody other than a guy like Nolan Gorman because teams want MLB experience, young, controllable power. So as much as I love Gorman and think I need Gorman for this team to continue its winning ways, put together a lineup without Nolan Gorman's name in it. It still looks like a dangerous offense from top to bottom, and now my rotation with a Logan Gilbert or a Wu or a Kirby from the Seattle Mariners, now it just got that much more intimidating if I acquire that player.
Yeah, and I view him more as a trade chip as well, but it's a limited, like, what I want in return for Gorman. It's got to be like a number 2 that has the potential of a 1, like a Gilbert. So otherwise, you're not trading for a 3 or a 4 that's cost control. That would be ridiculous. But I do view him more as a trade chip because I think in time, and I think these are the questions that the Cardinals should be asking is, in time, if we do trade him and he does become a 30 to 40 home run guy, who replaces that power? I think the answer is Jordan Walker. As he matures, I think he's going to mature into a guy that's going to hit 30 home runs. Or if not, I think you can get 20 home runs out of him. And then if you're keeping Lars Nootbaar fills in that other 10 that you're missing, because I think he still has more power to show as well. So I think those are the kind of questions that they have to ask. I don't know if I'd put him as like my number one trade chip. I would probably try to avoid moving him, but I do think like he is the guy, though, if Seattle came to me and said, yeah, we don't want to hear about Donovan. We don't want to hear about Nootbaar. We want to hear about Gorman.
And I'm confident they're not saying that for what it's worth.
Yeah, okay, but like if they did, I'd say, okay, then I'm open to moving him because he is their best trade chip, but I don't know if I really want to move him unless I have to, and I'm getting a cost control number 2.
You've got 2 guys right now that can play second base for you. One's the power bat and one's the high OPS because he's getting on base.
He doesn't have an arm.
Well, they'll put one on like the Winter Soldier and he'll be fine. But you got 2 guys at second base, and you're frankly, if Walker's going to be a DH next year, which sounds like it's going to happen, and Wilson Contreras isn't your catcher, you got no room for these guys.
So I do think that's a decision that the Cardinals need to make. What do we value more, the on-base percentage or the slug? Because you have on-base percentage coming from Nootbaar and Donovan. You've got slug coming from Nolan Gorman. You also have guys in the middle of your order that do a pretty good combination of both of those things, right? Like, the Cardinals have a championship caliber lineup right now. They do, because of all of these different elements that they've got in it. They don't look like the Yankees, who are so right-handed and slow slug-oriented that they're missing some of these other pieces that the Cardinals currently have. We see when a team like the Houston Astros wins the World Series, or the Dodgers of previous years goes to the World Series consistently, there are different kinds of elements to their lineup. They've got guys that hit for contact. They've got guys that'll take their walks. And they've got the middle of the order bats that do a combination of both. That's what the Cardinals have right now. So what is more valuable long-term here in St. Louis? All of these guys are cost-controlled for years to come. All of them are solid defensively at worst. So out of the 3 left-handed bats in Donovan, Nootbaar, and Gorman, I think they are going to come a point in time, either now at the deadline or in the offseason, where they get to choose 2 that they built around. And for me, I think because you have 2 on-base guys, I would choose to remove one of those guys from the equation. For me, I would trade Lars Nootbaar. Here's where the problem comes in, though. I don't think other teams value Lars Nootbaar as much as they currently value Brendan Donovan and Nolan Gorman, because those guys are elite in one area. Brendan Donovan is an elite on-base guy, and he's got great contact skills. Nolan Gorman is an elite power bat. And, oh, by the way, he's gotten pretty decent defensively at second base. So I think the 2 guys that have the most value are the 2 guys that I don't want to trade, in Gorman and in Donovan. And this is where things get really tough. If I get the right offer for one of those 2 guys in terms of the pitcher that the Cardinals are craving, and it's cost-controlled, it's a guy that can slot in as a number 2 starter for me for the next 3 to 4 years, I think you got to make the deal. And I say this as the president of the Brendan Donovan fan club. I think I would make that deal with whoever they decide to ask me for. It really comes down to me. Another team's making the decision for me of what they are willing to take.
Them having 2 on-base guys in Nootbaar and Donovan feels like having like Krug and Pernovich on the Blues. Where like they're the same guy.
The Blues are going to win with that.
They're not. They will. I don't expect to see both those guys on the ice this year. But that's what I'm saying. Is like it's the same mold. I don't think you can have both.
But God, do I not want to get rid of Brendan Donovan?
And I get it. I do get it.
Whereas you want to get rid of both of the guys that you just mentioned for the Blues.
Yeah. I get it. But I think at some point you have to your point, bite the bullet and say, okay, we need a cost control number 2. Let's get him with a Donovan or a Nootbaar. You pick who you want, and we're willing to give them to you.
Coming up next, Mike Salk hosts the morning show up in Seattle. He has been all over the Mariners trade deadline plans. What does he think about the Cardinals as a match for the Seattle Mariners going into this trade deadline? Does he like any of these Cardinals players in particular? We'll talk to Mike Salk about that coming up next here on 101 ESPN. Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. Alex, we've spent a good portion of the last month bringing up the Seattle Mariners as a potential trade partner for the St. Louis Cardinals. They've got a bunch of young starting pitching. The Cardinals have a bunch of young position players. It feels like a match, but let's get the Seattle perspective. We're going to the 101 ESPN hotline to be joined by Mike Salk. You can hear him on Brock and Salk from 6 to 10 a.m. up in Seattle. He's joining us now, and he's kind enough to do so from the side of the road. He's pulled over for us on his drive home. Mike, we appreciate the time, man. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. I wish I was going home. I have the unfortunate reality I have to go play golf this afternoon.
Oh, yeah, tough life.
Yeah, what an awful thing to do.
Guys, I'm so sorry. It's 72 degrees, bright sunshine, not a cloud in the sky, no humidity. I have to go play golf.
Mike,
it's challenging, but I survive.
Mike, I was debating playing golf on Saturday, but my debate is, will I die while I'm on the golf course when it's 110 degrees outside?
Yeah, I got to tell you, what's funny, Seahawks started training camp yesterday, and just talking to some of the guys, we were talking to Draymond Jones, who had come in from Denver, and he's like, I just had never seen any. I mean, the Seahawks practice on the side of Lake Washington. You got bald eagles, like, flying around. It's green, it's dry, it's not that hot, and all the guys are just like, this is reality. I know Seattle's got a bad rep for rain in the winter. Come here in the summer sometime. You'll never leave.
Mike, I say this with all due respect. Bleep off right now. Bleep all the way off with that nonsense. With how hot it's been out here lately. Don't need any of that in my life. All right, let's talk a little bit about your Mariners, because your team has been underwhelming. Our team has been flat out bad so far this year. And it feels to me like they match up pretty well as trade partners. But I wanted to get your perspective coming from Seattle. Do you feel that way about Seattle and the Cardinals as trade partners?
Well, I certainly think there are some guys on the Cardinals team that would interest the Mariners. And in fact, I thought these two teams were going to link up for a deal this past offseason. I thought that Tyler O'Neill was going to be on his way back to Seattle. I don't know whether the Cardinals would have taken Marco Gonzalez and just a flat-out reversal of the trade the teams had made a few years ago. But Tyler O'Neill, I thought, was going to be a really good fit here in Seattle and would have been a right-handed platoon option to go with Jared Kelenic in left field. It didn't work out, and the M's ended up signing A.J. Pollock, who's been terrible. But, yeah, I mean, you look at what St. Louis has, and you guys know this, they've got a lot of controllable young hitters. The question is, do they want to give any of them up? Would Nootbaar fit in Seattle? Yes, they'd love him. Would Donovan fit in Seattle? Even better. I mean, if I were Jerry Dipoto, the name I would be calling about every day is Brendan Donovan. I just, with all of those years of control, is St. Louis going to trade any of those guys?
Sure doesn't seem like it at this point, Mike. Because every other day, Mike, the Cardinals say, well, this guy's untouchable and that guy's untouchable.
The Cardinals really want to get a number one starter for Tyler O'Neill, basically, is what it's becoming at this point.
Is Seattle interested in Paul DeYoung for a number one starter? Because they'd be willing to do that, it sounds like.
Probably not going to happen. And it's not to say they wouldn't want a Paul DeYoung, but, I mean, that guy's going to go for a 19-year-old prospect, lottery ticket type of a guy. I mean, look, if somebody gets serious with the Mariners, Logan Gilbert could absolutely be available. I would think everybody on this roster, Major League roster, is potentially available other than Julio Rodriguez and George Kirby. I mean, Kirby is a future ace. Julio is obviously in his own category. And, everyone else is available, but at the right price.
How would you rank the trio, then, of Gilbert, Miller, and Wu?
It's a good question. In terms, I mean, obviously Gilbert has now done it for a couple of years. He's got a better repertoire, a more complete repertoire of pitches. He's a great dude. You guys would love him if he were there. I mean, just a really kind of it's weird that he's not a lefty because he's kind of offbeat and like thinks about the world a little bit differently. It's just I really like him. And he's got the crazy long arms and the weird delivery. And he can fool people with that. And so, he's a little bit more highly developed. Miller and Wu are very similar. You're talking about two young guys who get you out almost exclusively with fastballs. And they spot them well. All of them have excellent command. They don't walk a lot of guys. And they all sort of fit into this mode of – and Kirby, by the way, is very similar as well, where they're just getting you out with four-seam fastballs over and over again. I think Bryce Miller's probably a little bit farther along than Wu. He's got a little bit better secondary stuff, and Wu's kind of coming off some arm issues before, earlier in his career that's kind of limited his development. But, I mean, it's really remarkable. As bad as the Mariners have been offensively, this pitching staff, even without Robbie Ray, who made one start for them, has been so good that they find themselves still in this thing.
So, Mike, you mentioned these guys could be available for the right price. In your opinion, what is the right price for one of those three names you mentioned?
Well, I mean, and I don't know whether St. Louis has that. If that's the kind of thing you're looking for, I don't know whether St. Louis has that. I mean, Paul Goldschmidt, right? I mean, like if you're going to get to that point of a conversation where somebody is going to completely change who the Mariners are as an offensive unit and leadership and everything else that somebody like Goldschmidt would bring to the table, maybe then you start having that conversation. I like Nootbaar. I like, as I said, Donovan. I don't see how they're going to be worth it for the Mariners to deal a player of the caliber of any of those three young pitchers.
Interesting. What if it like Nootbaar, Donovan, or Gorman? Those three you don't think are a good starting point for a discussion?
Well, sure, they're a good starting point, and everyone in their city thinks what they have is more valuable than what anybody else has.
Ain't that the truth?
So if I were to bring this to Seattle radio, they say you can't trade Bryce Miller for anybody other than Shohei Ohtani. It's like, well, that's not really the way reality works. And Jerry has shown a pretty good ability to be a deal maker. I mean,
he's a crazy person, right, Mike?
Me?
No. Dapota's a crazy person when it comes to these trades, right?
Well, everybody wants to be, right? Everyone wants to deal with the crazy person. They're like, hey, I'm going to give up hey, Colton Wong's not hitting. Could we give up Colton Wong and get back, Donovan? Like, no, of course not. The Mariners have some guys that are really valuable. And in a market right now where nobody is selling, everybody is buying, they could end up doing both of those things at the same time. They've got a reliever in Paul Sewald who I think would bring back quite a bit. Teoscar Hernandez is a rental player who, I think would still bring back quite a bit. They may end up doing the sort of buy-sell thing where they trade Sewald, but at the same time maybe trade for a guy that can help them right now. I've never really seen a trade deadline like this where everybody is in it, and amazingly the next, 4 or 5 days may actually determine what some of these teams opt to do.
If you had to guess, Mike, and this is my final question that I've got for you, we really appreciate you joining us today here on the show. Do you think that the Mariners would value more a power bat or a high on base guy if they had to prioritize one of those two things that their lineup is currently lacking?
Yes. They would absolutely value that. I mean, you have to watch this offense every day to really know how challenging it's been. And it's funny because I actually think they designed an offense that's not bad, but Julio's had a down year adjusting to sort of his sophomore season. Eugenio Suarez came back to earth. Ty France has been awful after some really good years. And then the guys they picked up in the offseason, Colton Wong, who you're awfully familiar with, and Teoscar Hernandez. Colton Wong has a sub-500 OPS.
Oof.
I mean, I can't even tell you how bad he's been until maybe the last 2 weeks, and his defense has been awful, and it's too bad. I mean, he's a great dude. Everybody likes him, and you want him to succeed, and they spent for him, but he's been terrible. So, yes, they need all of those things. I guess the answer is because their ballpark is not really one in which you can just go bash the ball around. On-base percentage is always going to be crucial for the Mariners. They're looking for guys who, in their words, control the zone, guys with a high, walk-to-strikeout ratio. Unfortunately, what they're dealing with right now has been exactly the opposite.
Interesting. It sure feels like when I think about what you're describing and what they need, Brendan Donovan makes all the sense in the world for the Seattle Mariners. Unfortunately, I think the Cardinals value him so highly that they'd be like, yeah, we'll do Donovan for Gilbert straight up. And my assumption would be the Mariners would say, well, that's not enough. We need you to throw more in there.
I think I would agree with that. And if they're trading Logan Gilbert, I mean, apologies to Donovan, who I like a lot as a player, and I think the Mariners would be willing to give up some other prospects for him. I mean, if you're talking about Emerson Hancock and some of their guys, they got more pitchers, by the way, on the way. Logan Gilbert is an established starter. If you're giving up Logan Gilbert, you're hoping to get back like Fernando Tatis in the deal. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not. He's at that level, I believe, in terms of a guy who could compete for Cy Young awards. So I don't know whether that's a deal that the Mariners would be willing to do. But you know what? You never know. I didn't think that they would trade Tyler O'Neill for Marco Gonzalez, and they did that. So who the heck knows what they might do?
Not only, Mike, have you crushed my dreams about golfing in St. Louis over the weekend, but now you've crushed my Logan Gilbert dreams.
You guys would really like Logan Gilbert, too. I'm really sorry. Like, you guys
Stop it,
really
Mike.
like Logan Gilbert.
Mike, we'll be paying attention to see what these two teams decide to do over the course of the next 5 days or so. Enjoy yourself out there in Seattle where it's beautiful and just fantastic weather, and the golf's amazing this time of year.
Actually, you know what, guys? It's my bad. My temperature just went from 72 to 73. So really sorry. And I think I see a cloud, so it's my bad. Sorry about that.
Get out of here. Get back on the road. We'll talk with you again soon, my man.
Enjoy your
Appreciate
6
you.
pitcher.
That's Mike Salk joining us here on 101 ESPN. Appreciate him hopping on the show.
All right, Goldie for Gilbert. Who says no?
So,
sadly, yes.
Why I wanted to have, one of the many reasons why I wanted to have Mike on the show is because what he just said there at the end of every team valuing their stuff more than anybody else values it is 100% true. And it's why, like, we've got one guy on the text line, Alex, that is saying, hey, guys, what about, like, Dylan Carlson and Tommy Edman for Gilbert? No, they will say no.
I don't even think that gets you a 5 pitcher.
Another one said, what about Gomez and Dylan Carlson? For
Lil Poppy?
Like, this is why it's so hard for the Cardinals to acquire the pitching that they need. Because when you've got that pitching, dude, you hang on to it for dear life. Yeah. When you've got a guy
that the Cardinals and you trade them both for Marcell Ozuna.
When you've got a guy that has established himself as a major league starter with a 3.5 ERA and you can just write that in pen into the middle of your rotation every year, why would you ever give it up? Forget what the asking price is for the other team. Unless, as he mentioned, you've got like Fernando Tatis Jr. or like Mike Trout coming in the other way.
Well, he might be available next year.
You just say to the opposition, no, we're good. We'll talk to you guys later.
Yeah, we'll go spend money in free agency to fix our problems.
Paul Goldschmidt, as he said, we're good. If you're not offering him, we're good. We'll talk to you guys about Nolan Arenado. Otherwise, we're good. Arenado likes to golf, right? He'd like it up here.
Goldie likes to golf.
So the reason why I bring that up is because when we mention it's going to take Gorman or Donovan to be able to get one of these pitchers that you guys like, this is why. And that's the starting point.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not or for those names, it's and those names.
Well, I don't know if you have to trade both of them.
Well, you said that it's not enough with one of them.
Right, and so that's where you get into the and we're adding in prospects. So, like, Gorman plus Ivan Herrera or something like that. Gorman plus Victor Scott.
I can't trade Ivan Herrera. He's the catcher of the future.
Exactly.
That
is
is
where
true.
it gets really hard.
That's why we'll throw Kisner in there.
What was your guys' biggest takeaway from our conversation with Mike Salk?
That Logan Gilbert's not going to be a Cardinal.
Yeah, Logan Gilbert's not being dealt. That was my biggest takeaway. I think they would listen on Wu and who was the other one? Miller. I don't think Gilbert's on the market. I think he's one of those where it's like, we'll take a phone call on him, but unless you are offering up like one of your top stars, like Baltimore could acquire him for Jackson Holiday, maybe, and that's a big maybe. Outside of that, like I don't know how any team's going to acquire him, and like it's easy if you look at Seattle on paper, it's easy to see why they would say that because if they go into a postseason next year and are healthy, you're telling me
Gilbert, Wu, and Miller. That's
well, you didn't even mention Robbie Ray.
Yeah.
And when he
and Castillo
and Marco Gonzalez.
like it's easy to see how they can look at themselves and go, okay, it's easier to find bats than it is to acquire pitching. Let's hold on to our pitching, and then in the offseason we'll figure out the bats.
But if you're the Seattle Mariners and you have all of that pitching just to go get a difference-maker bat, that's why Gorman would be more intriguing if I'm Seattle than Donovan, because you put some pop in the middle of that lineup and it helps.
But Donovan has a little bit of a combination of both, and I think that's how they would view it is, we got a guy that can hit 15 home runs and plays defense. We can put him wherever we need him. Like if we end up having a hole in the outfield next year, he can play out there. If we just want him to be our everyday second baseman, he could be that for them. Nolan Gorman, I bet you if they traded him, by the way, to Seattle, he'd be their future third baseman. I think he would move back over to his natural position.
It's just so wild to me to hear this and talk about and hear somebody else from the other side talk about how good these pitchers are, and then on this side of the card say, I can't part with Brendan Donovan for that. Like, that is the prototypical item you're searching for to make a difference for your roster, a young, cost-controlled pitcher who is already an established 3 with the ceiling of a 2, but yet can't trade Donovan because, well, he's too valuable to this team.
And he's so cheap. Like, Logan Gilbert is cheap, cost-controlled. He's not even arbitration eligible until 2025. He's a free agent in 2028. So getting a guy like that, it's going to cost you a whole hell of a lot. Would you do, like,
yes,
Nootbaar and Gorman?
Yeah, I would.
For him?
I said I did it yesterday, so yeah.
Yeah, I would, because I just don't think you're going to find the equivalent of what Logan Gilbert is in 3 different pitchers in free agency. You won't pay for that.
I don't think I would. I think I would just say, you know what, I'll try to pay for my pitching at that point.
The problem,
instead of doing Nootbaar and Gorman for a 2.
This team doesn't like to pay for pitching.
I know. Coming up next, Alex, it's your favorite segment that we are going to be doing up until the trade deadline. It is time for Major League Baseball trade deadline.
Roundup! Woo!
It's coming up next.
Coverage of 101 ESPN. to the Fast Lane and more. If you missed anything on 101 ESPN today, get caught up with all the shows and 101 podcasts at 101ESPN.com or on your 101 mobile app.
Driven by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
101 ESPN Sports Center.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Cardinals took down the Diamondbacks yesterday 11-7. They'll be back in action tonight as they start a 4-game set against the Chicago Cubs. 6:45 will be first pitch as Justin Steele's on the mound for Chicago, and Miles Michaelis will be on the mound for the St. Louis Cardinals. The Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff. Find your road trip 24/7 at londoff.com, londoffAutoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
We're right back to more of it. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN.
It's time for your Major League Baseball deadline roundup.
Stick 'em up, partner.
Here on 101 ESPN. Alex, I think tomorrow we should come in with cowboy outfits ready to go for this segment.
Oh, my gosh.
How do you feel about that?
I'm going to buy a cowboy hat
Hey,
tonight.
buy me one while you're doing it.
No.
Go ahead and grab me one as well. I've got
my little Woody Toy Story doll has one. I'll bring for
baby
you.
boy at home. I don't have time to go
Or
shopping
money.
right now.
Yeah.
Or money.
Yeah.
So
When you go
grab
buy
those
those
for us.
diapers, go ahead and get one of those.
Yeah.
I'll wear one of those.
So get me a hat tomorrow.
I'm going to go get a bolo tie. Belt buckle.
All right, let's round up this news around Major League Baseball. The Dodgers yesterday made a trade. Ahmed Rosario's going to L.A. for Noah Syndergaard. This is a trade that, honestly, I don't think makes a ton of sense for either team. Ahmed Rosario hits lefties really well. Alex, he's like the worst defender in all of Major League Baseball this season. He technically plays shortstop, does not do so very well. Do you think this changes their need for Paul DeJong, for example?
No. I don't. I think they're going to view this as, because they got Kike Hernandez too. He's infielder / outfielder. You can move him around. I think this was just a matter of bringing in the offense for it, and they've got the guys who can play defense for them. I don't think this changes their need for a shortstop. I think if they have somebody available to them, like if Paul DeJong was floated around, they would still take it because it's a bat and it's a guy that they can put a defense. And frankly, we know how the Dodgers like to roll. One guy will play 3 innings and they'll get another one in for the next 3.
It's kind of how I feel. I feel like they'll do a thing where I think Ahmed Rosario is just going to be a bench bat for them.
Yeah.
I think he's probably going to be somebody that they bring in a late game situation. You got a lefty on the mound. Let's platoon right here. And that'll be their opportunity to be able to get him into the game. I don't think it changes a whole lot in regards to Paul DeJong. I think they would view Paul DeJong as a starting caliber shortstop.
Yeah.
And he's good defensively, can play solid defense for you and hit, league average with a little bit of pop. So I don't think it changes a whole lot. I think this was about them adding to their bench more than it was anything else, and getting rid of Noah Syndergaard's money.
And probably a vibe check. Ahmed Rosario might be a great teammate.
Kike Hernandez, we know he helps with the vibes in the clubhouse.
You got to have good vibes. And the Cardinals say the vibes on this team is right, so let's just bring it back for 2024.
All right, let's continue with our Major League Baseball trade deadline roundup here on BK and Ferrario. Guys, Derek Gould tweeted this out a little bit ago on Jack Flaherty. He says, past talks with the Cardinals about a contract extension did not gather much momentum, and now, months later, neither did the Cardinals as contenders. He's continuing to say the Cardinals have not had conversations with Jack Flaherty about an extension in, quote, several months, end quote. That is according to his reporting for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Now, both things can be true, what Gould is reporting and what John Denton is reporting. And the way that that's true is the Cardinals have interest in bringing a final 11th hour offer to Jack Flaherty, and that is where the negotiations would begin. But when you hear this from Derek Gould, Alex, your reaction is blank.
It's what happens at the trade deadline. One team or one individual is reporting that the conversations are ongoing. The other one's saying that they haven't had conversations for several months and it's not going to happen. This is what I would imagine front offices are hoping for. You want that internal discussion around Major League Baseball. Is he available? Is he not available? Are you going to sign an extension? And frankly, this is how you just kind of slide these things over to the agency of the player and say, like, hey, here's what's going on. So I take both sides and look at it and say, yeah, I think this is exactly what's taking place. They want Jack Flaherty. They haven't approached Jack Flaherty, not for a couple of months, but they plan to before the trade deadline. I think both sides can be correct.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that they want to bring back Jack Flaherty, but I think they want him back on their terms, and I think that's where the disconnect is. My guess is Jack wants more years, and I can't blame him because of his injury history, and he probably wants more money. My guess is the Cardinals are looking at like a 2-3 year deal around like $16 million, and he's probably thinking, no, I deserve 5
years, 125.
Yeah, I deserve the qualifying offer if I go to free agency if I'm still here, which is going to be around $20 million, and I want multiple years beyond 3. So I think you're right. I think he's looking like 5 by 125. And the Cardinals, I think they know what they have in Jack, and they don't want to pay that.
Yeah, earlier today, John Denton told us that there's no offer yet, but, quote, they would have to pay him like an ace, end quote, if they wanted to keep him around. I don't think anybody in this show, in this room right now, is interested in doing that.
Not in this saloon.
As we continue with some Cardinals...
Roundup trade talk.
He still got it wrong.
It's good enough.
Every time I use Roundup, I think Woody's Roundup.
I want to continue with some Derek Gould reporting. This came from his chat the other day. He was asked about the Cardinals trade chips. Want to get your perspective on these 3 players that he mentioned in here, Alex. On Nolan Gorman, he said, quote, the Cardinals see him as perhaps their biggest chip to move towards the standout, ready now established pitcher of their wishes. Seattle's in play, though again, I don't have a feel on how interested the Mariners are. Then on Brendan Donovan, this is what Derek Gould said. Quote, the Cardinals are looking to include other players in conversations, end quote.
What?
Wait, what?
When he was asked about Brendan Donovan, he said, quote, the Cardinals are looking to include other players in their trade conversations.
Who are the
quote.
other players?
Not named Brendan Donovan is what I got.
But also not named Lars Nootbaar or Tommy Edman or Tyler O'Neill or Jordan Walker or Nolan Gorman. Although Nolan Gorman's still out there. Nolan Arenado.
So here's what he said about one of the players that you just mentioned there on Jordan Walker. He said, quote, the Cardinals are declining offers that bring up him or Lars Nootbaar. They want those 2 players to be fixtures in their outfield for several years to come.
And I can understand them wanting that. But then who are you trading to upgrade?
Apparently Nolan Gorman.
Great.
I mean, it
Go
seems
get the pitcher then.
The Cardinals appear to see their outfield of the future as Jordan Walker, Lars Nootbaar, and Tommy Edman. That appears to be their current.
Doesn't have an arm.
No.
Don't need it from what I've been told.
Yeah. But that appears to be how they view their outfield. What I find interesting, though, is...
And Tyler O'Neill. You didn't say Tyler O'Neill.
Yeah. Their infield gets a little crowded when you do that. Because now we're talking about, okay, Brendan Donovan, I would assume, becomes your second baseman in that scenario.
If his arm gets fixed.
Mason Wynn is your shortstop, and I guess that's how you get to the place where Nolan Gorman becomes the expendable piece.
Which is a good-looking lineup. Yeah, it sucks to lose a 35, 40 home run potential player on the left side, but that's what you got to give if you want to get something good in return. That's a very good-looking lineup for the Cardinals.
Maybe they've made their decision. Maybe they say, you know what, Brendan Donovan and Lars Nootbaar are better players and more long-term answers for us than Nolan Gorman are.
And they feel like the pop is for that you're losing a Nolan Gorman is going to be there with Jordan Walker and Mason Wynn.
Yeah, and I think
not Mason Wynn.
Have you seen how many home runs he's hit this season?
Yeah, not 40.
I saw he hit a grand slam the other day.
If he hits 15 and Walker hits 35, that's 50.
There's a 100% chance Cardinals fans are furious 3 years from now that they traded Nolan Gorman, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
3 years
from now, next year. I think he's the guy that you look back on that if you lose the trade, you go, what the bleep was Mo doing? And even if you win the trade, you look back and go, what the bleep was Mo doing? So I think he's the one guy that fits into that category. But I think you're right. I think they are looking at it as keeping Donovan and Nootbaar because Gorman's the name that still has not really popped up as an untouchable, which to me is weird. That seems to signal he's on the market for the right piece again. They're not just trading him away. They're trading him for a difference maker in the rotation.
The hard part is finding that piece.
Yeah. They still seem to have the same kind of, I don't know if MO is the right word, where they love the 2 guys, even though they haven't done this on the batting order, 2 guys at the top of the order with great on base, like they did, like what the theory was with Dexter Fowler and Matt Carpenter when they had those guys. So I think they want to keep those 2 high on base guys, and then you're getting the power in the lineup from Goldie, Arenado, Contreras, as wherever he's playing, and Jordan Walker.
Would you say that the Cardinals have got the power?
I've got the power.
No, that was I thought for sure that was going to be some sort of cowboy reference, and it wasn't. So I'm a little disappointed.
Kind of was. There. All right, final thing here. MajorLeagueBaseball.com put together.
Come on, man.
Yeah.
Can I get another sound effect?
Wait for the sounder.
I want to do the jukebox thing where I just play the hits.
It was a horse. That was Silver. Hi, oh, Silver. Away!
Yeehaw! Alex is having a heart attack right now. All right, so MLB.com.
My head hurts after that first segment.
Said, or put together their rankings of the starters that could be available at this year's trade deadline. It's a little bit concerning to me as a Cardinals fan.
This is good.
So here were the rankings. Number 1 was Dylan Cease. They continue from there. Blake Snell, Justin Verlander, Eduardo Rodriguez, Marcus Stroman.
Where's the Cardinals guys at?
Max Scherzer.
What?
Aaron Savali.
What?
And then finally, Jordan Montgomery.
All right.
Okay.
Continued James Paxton.
Oh, bleep off.
Lance Lynn. And finally, Jack Flaherty.
Hold on, they put Jack Flaherty below Lance Lynn and James Paxton?
At least they're on the list.
Here's the thing. If that is really Jack Flaherty's true value on the trade market, we are going to be hugely underwhelmed by the return.
But
secondarily, we are going to make a grave mistake. The Cardinals would be making a grave mistake to re-sign or extend the 12th most valuable trade candidate at this year's trade deadline.
But here's the thing. Cease is off the market, at least that's what the reports are. Blake Snell's off the market. Marcus Stroman might not be traded because the Cubs are within playoff striking distance.
And Verlander and Rodriguez are unique cases where Verlander has $40 million next year. There's going to be very few teams that can take that on. And Rodriguez, because of the contracts that he has, he might opt in next year.
Scherzer
and that
the
can
same
change
way.
things
Scherzer
as well.
the same way.
Yep.
So now we're talking
Savali, Montgomery, Paxton, Lynn, and Flaherty.
And
that's Savali's different too because he's cost controlled. So it's really
3 in the top 5.
Stroman,
right.
Montgomery, Paxton, Lynn, Flaherty.
Yeah, and I would put Flaherty ahead of Lynn. I would.
I can't believe they don't.
Yeah, agreed. But I could understand the argument against Paxton because Paxton is got more swing and miss right now than Jack Flaherty. But yeah, to your point, Alex, most of the names on this list I don't think are available. So I think there's still 3 of the top 5 trade candidates.
He's Alex Ferrario. That's Tanner Hendrickson, and I'm Brandon Kiley. Somebody on the text line said, could you all please stop with the shoot 'em up cowboy bleep? You sound ridiculous. No, sir. Coming up next is the Junk Drawer here on 101 ESPN.
This is exactly where you want to be, listening to us. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN. Let's open it up. The Junk Drawer with BK and Ferrario.
Brought to you by Fenton Bar and Grill. Best trust wings in Missouri. Dine in, carry out, 7 days a week.
That's Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. We got a text late last night, Alex, from T-Bone saying, guys, got a junk drawer story for you today.
It typically means one of two things. Something with his barbecue pit or something with his deck.
So let's find out. T-Bone, what do you got for us?
Well, neither or, although I do have something on the deck.
Surprising.
No, are you guys big into, like, shoes? Like, not collecting them, but do you like certain
like
pairs of shoes?
Like wearing them? Yeah, I don't like going barefoot.
No, but like getting lots of shoes, like having multiple pairs.
I have like 6 or 7 at home.
No,
Jordans,
I have
Dunks.
I have flip-flops. I have running shoes and normal shoes, and then dress shoes. So
Luca's got as many shoes as I do already.
Oh, okay. Yeah, my daughter's
got
more
4
shoes.
new pairs of Jordans ready to go for him, lined up for the next year and a half.
My daughter's got like 5 different pairs of like Nike shoes.
Did you guys know Apple made shoes at one point?
No.
Not for sale, by the way.
Apple makes shoes?
Yeah, so I saw this story last night, and I was like, this is incredible, because I would never want to pay for this. An ultra rare pair of Apple sneakers was just sold at an auction for $50,000. And what these were a pair of like white shoes. They've got like a rainbow.
They look like New Balance from the mid-90s.
Yeah, and they've got kind of a rainbow Apple symbol on it, kind of on the side of the shoe. And what these were they were given out at a news conference, or a national sales conference, in the mid-1990s that Apple gave to their workers.
These look like New Balances with an Apple logo.
Yeah. And they just fetched $50,000 up in an auction.
I guess if you think that it's people pay crazy money for stuff that I would never spend on, like baseball cards, for example, right? It's just a collector's item. It's something that you have that is in your possession, and it retains value because other people deem it to be valuable. This is something that I would assume, if you were to buy it, put in your house as a conversation starter.
Do you know how disappointed I am?
That's my guess.
That, like, things that I used to have and collect as a kid, if I just would have kept it in good condition or not given it away, would have been worth a ton of money.
Are Beanie Babies still
Beanie Babies used to have
those. Do you know what Beanie Babies are?
No, and there's a movie coming out on Apple about them.
I had a feeling that would be the case.
Yeah.
Like Pokemon cards. Do you know how much money I could have got for the Pokemon cards that I used to spend money on all the time?
I don't even know where mine went.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
I gave them away at a garage sale for like $25.
Yu-Gi-Oh?
I'm an idiot.
Do you remember Yu-Gi-Oh?
Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Yep, that was big.
That one doesn't sound familiar.
It's the same as Pokemon. It's just something else.
Maybe I do.
I used to have those wrestlers, those action figures.
Yeah.
Gave those away.
Sure.
And then, of course, the one that really upsets me is like the video games. Like the N64 and those games I had.
Yeah, but we didn't, let's be honest. We didn't take good care of our video games.
And people that buy those and don't touch them are just...
They're psychos.
They're insane.
Yeah.
Like, how do you get that as a kid and not touch it? It's like in the 40-Year-Old Virgin movie when he's got all those toys and he's like, well, I don't take it out of the box. Like, what? Do you know how hard it is?
All-time great underrated movie, by the way.
God.
One of the better comedies of the 2000s.
One of the best quotable movies out there.
I'm going to guess T-Bone's never seen it, have you?
No, but I've heard of it. I know who it stars.
Can you please watch
Paul Rudd.
40-Year-Old
Did you just say it stars Paul Rudd?
No.
What am I thinking of a different movie?
Yeah, probably.
Apparently.
What am I thinking of?
It does not star. Paul Rudd is in it, but it doesn't star Paul Rudd.
Oh, I thought he starred in it.
No.
My bad.
He is not the 40-year-old virgin.
My bad.
You need to see 40-Year-Old Virgin.
Dude, that is an all-time great.
It's genuinely an excellent
That
movie.
should catapult to the top of your list.
The last one you guys told me to watch, I watched, and I was like, this is disappointing.
No, you'll like 40-Year-Old Virgin.
What was the movie we told you to watch that you watched that was disappointing?
Adam Sandler.
Just go with it?
Oh, no. He's talking about
Happy
Big Daddy.
Gilmore.
Big Daddy.
Big Daddy.
Oh, Big Daddy, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, you just got terrible taste in movies then, because Big Daddy is
I am
outstanding.
more confident, based on your humor, that you will like 40-Year-Old Virgin than I was that you would like Big Daddy. Big Daddy was he had to be there.
You let me down the first time, and I just don't know if I can go back.
You gotta have
Unlike the Cardinals, I learned my lesson.
You got to have a toddler to get Big Daddy.
I can touch the stove twice.
I identify with Adam Sandler so much when he goes,
I wipe my own ass.
You were normal yesterday. Somebody get the kid a Happy Meal?
Damn you, Scuba Steve!
Scuba Steve!
Coming up next, the biggest story in baseball right now is what the Angels have decided to do. And we have very differing viewpoints on whether or not they're making the right decision with what they're doing. We'll talk about it next here on 101 ESPN. He's Alex Ferrario, that's Tanner Hendrickson, and I'm Brandon Kiley. So the biggest story in Major League Baseball is what the Angels have decided to do, and I respect this. In fact, I'm really excited about this. The Angels have decided not only are we not trading Shohei Ohtani, we're going for it. Now, Alex, this is a risk. There is a lot of risk that is inherent when you decide to say, we're not trading the guy that might be the most valuable rental chip that has ever been placed on the trade block. Instead, we're going to build around him, especially when it guarantees you nothing. They are currently outside of the playoffs looking in, and they are hoping that whatever they do at the trade deadline allows them to get into the postseason with Shohei for the first time in their career. This comes from Jason Stark. One front office executive whose club has starting pitching to trade described a conversation with a contender this way. Contending team asks about an available starter. The selling team suggests multiple prospects that it would want in return. The contending team then says those names represent, a fair asking price. And then the talks don't progress because the contender says it has to hold out for other players while pursuing a quote-unquote bigger deal. That bigger deal was Shohei Ohtani. That's what the trade market has been going through over the last week or two as teams are trying to gather information on who the buyers are, who the sellers are, etc. It ultimately came down to the decision from the Angels to hold on to Shohei Ohtani. And last night, they signaled their decision. They have decided to keep Shohei, and they are buyers. They got Lucas Giolito, they got Lopez, and they're going to try to build this thing around them. Alex, my opinion on this is very simple. If I have Shohei Ohtani, I'm not selling him. Period. Point blank, end of story. Is that foolhardy? Maybe. But I have the guy on my team that might go down as the greatest player in the history of Major League Baseball. And if I can get 2 more months of that guy, and maybe 3, if I can get him into October, as an owner, I am doing everything in my power to make that happen. And so I like the fact that they decided to hold on to Shohei Ohtani. You are never going to get anything resembling fair value for him. It's impossible. Even if they got everything, they wouldn't have. That last year, the Nationals got for Juan Soto, it wouldn't be fair value for Shohei bleeping Ohtani. And let's be honest, guys, they're screwed no matter what after this. If Shohei decides to go this offseason somewhere else, the Angels are going to probably be pretty bad next year, and probably the year after that, and probably the year after that. And guess what changes for them? Literally nothing. They've been bad. So you might as well try to make the playoffs for the first time since 2015, try to win a playoff series for the first time in Mike Trout's career, and try to make the postseason for the first time since you signed one of the greatest talents that we've ever seen in Major League Baseball. I applaud you, Los Angeles Angels, for making the decision that I think not enough owners have the guts to make in this spot.
When we talked with David Kaplan about the White Sox and him talking about how they won't pay Dylan Cease the proper money he deserved because they just don't pay those guys. That's what frustrates me about pro sports. When you have a generational talent, and I'm not saying Dylan Cease is Shohei Ohtani. It's very different situations. But when you have somebody who is the star of that team and you know that the team's success resides around that player, you do not trade that player in any circumstance. Even if you know you can get a king's ransom in return, or if he's walking away. If I'm 4 games out of a playoff spot and I have that player on my team, I want to see that team be aggressive and say, bleep it. If we lose them, yeah, we lose them, and it's going to suck. But we are going to throw everything we have at Shohei Ohtani to try and keep him in L.A., and to do that, let's build a team that can be somewhat competitive in a deep playoff run, because the best way to try and convince a player to stay with my team in free agency is to have a winner around him. And if I go out there and get one piece that I absolutely need in terms of making my team better, go update pitching. And you got one of the best pitchers that was going to be available on the trade market in Lucas Giolito. They were rumored to be a part of the Candelario trade with the Washington Nationals. I love the fact that the Angels looked at this and say, if we lose him, then oh well, we lost him and we gave it our best shot. And I'll applaud them for that, just like I applaud them for being aggressive at the trade deadline and try and make their team as good as they can with Shohei Ohtani on it.
All right, T-Bone, bleep all over everything that we just said.
Hey, Buzz Killington over here.
Yeah, I would have dealt Shohei Ohtani. I look at this team, and I think even with the addition of Giolito right now, there's still more pieces away from even being in the conversation, not in the conversation, to be a playoff team. And I think they've got to leapfrog, 2 teams in the standings to get in. I just view it as you are a team that is depleted in your farm system right now. Ohtani's going to help replenish that farm system by trading him. And I think now what they're doing, I get it from their perspective of we've got to go for it because if we don't even make the playoffs, we're probably not even in the conversation of getting Ohtani back. My concern that the Angels are doing is that they are mortgaging the future of the organization, and it's a lost cause because Ohtani's not coming back, and B, they're not going to make the playoffs. So they're depleting a farm system that's already depleted to try and just get into the playoffs in a team that is far away from being the top team in the American League, or even, honestly, the second team in their own division. They're still they're way behind the Texas Rangers. They are way behind the Houston Astros. They are behind the Tampa Bay Rays. They are behind the Baltimore Orioles when you're looking at contention in terms of going for it. So I would have sold Shohei Ohtani because of the assets you're going to get in return. I understand what you're saying. It's almost impossible to get the pieces back that you need for like the Juan Soto deal to make it work out. But I would have sold Shohei Ohtani because I think it's just better for the organization in the long term than just going for it this 1 year in which you may not even make the playoffs and you've just depleted your farm system even further. They could be setting themselves back 5 to 7 years now compared to like maybe 3 if you sell off Ohtani.
Meanwhile, he's got a perfect game going right now in the 5th inning.
I saw he hurt his elbow. I almost thought when we started this segment that he left the game with an injury, which would have been fantastic.
You know the sentiment you always say about the Cardinals, BK, or Tanner, is you just got to get into the playoffs and anything can happen?
I don't like that sentiment.
I don't either. You say it all the freaking time with the Cardinals.
I do not. I said the lesson they should learn.
Can happen.
I said last year when they got bounced in the first round, I think you were
that
out.
Applied, by the way, it's this year because Major League Baseball is much more congested this year in the standings than it has been in previous years.
I think the AL a little bit different.
But see, if I'm the Angels and I have got Shohei Ohtani, I'd say I just need to get in because I got the best player in baseball right now.
Imagine Shohei Ohtani in a 7-game series starting twice for you and batting in the order for you every day. Like that matters. And then you got Lucas Giolito as your number 2. Like,
I don't think they're done either.
If I had to guess, they probably missed the playoffs. Like that's the most likely outcome here is that the Angels end up missing out on the playoffs, and we look back on this and we say, man, they went for it, but what they miss out on. And here's what they missed out on. Major League Baseball trade rumors put together recently the best returns at the deadline in recent memory. So this is dating back to 2017. So it's not like a historical evidence of a 25-year period, right? But over a 5-year stretch, what was the best return that any team got for selling any individual rental at the deadline? The best they could come up with, the single best return, was the Nelson Cruz trade back in 2021 when the Minnesota Twins decided to trade him to the Rays. In return, they got one guy that they ended up DFAing very soon thereafter. And the real prize in this deal was they got Joe Ryan. Joe Ryan is a really solid major league starter. Joe Ryan ain't changing anybody's future. He's a good player that has a 4.0 ERA this year. And in the 2 years since being a everyday pitcher or every 5th day pitcher for the Minnesota Twins, has a 3.8 ERA. That is the best return that any rental in the last 5 years has gotten for any individual team. Now, could Shohei conceivably get more than that? Of course he could. He should. But the likelihood of him adding any individual player that really changes in a significant way the future of the Angels, pretty unlikely because prospects in general are just a crapshoot. Even Gordon Graceffo, who we were all super excited about this time last year, now all of us are wondering, is he anything more than a 5-starter? So if you added that guy last year at the deadline, you'd be thrilled. This year, you'd be saying, maybe he helps us. Liberator. 2 years ago, you had that guy, top 100 prospect, lefty, going to be a number 3 starter for you. Now, maybe a bullpen arm. So the reason why I bring that up is because what the Angels likely would have added at the deadline might not have even changed anything about what they're about to go through over the next 3 to 5 years. And instead, what you get now by keeping him is the chance of a lifetime to watch one of the greatest players in the history of baseball make it to the postseason in your team's uniform for the one and only time. I think that's meaningful. And if I was the owner, that is exactly the decision that I would choose to make here, because we're screwed no matter what. Because we wasted the entirety of Shohei Ohtani's time here in LA. Let's not make that mistake again. Let's now go for it and see what it gets us. And if it amounts to nothing, so be it. But we got to take our chance because we are already pot committed with Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout trying to make this thing work.
I've seen this text a couple of times. Why are we Why are we using this logic for the Angels and Ohtani and not using the same logic for the Cardinals with Hicks, Flaherty, and Montgomery? Do people really think that the three of them even amount to anything close to what Shohei Ohtani is?
No, forget that.
Well, I think what they're saying, I think I kind of get where they're going.
The Angels are 4 games out of the playoffs. That's why.
Yeah, well, I think they're saying if you're going by this logic, I'm just trying to read into this text, which is hard. I'm assuming what they're saying is if you're not going to sell a piece like Ohtani with this kind of logic, why would you ever sell it all? Because prospects are crapshoots. I'm assuming that's what they're saying.
Because it's a generational player compared to guys that I could probably fill their spots in free agency.
And it's about the opportunity cost. The opportunity cost of trading Shohei Ohtani is you didn't give yourself an opportunity to make the playoffs this year when you're a few games out of the wild card with one of the greatest players in the history of baseball. For the Cardinals, their opportunity cost is they didn't go for it when they were 11 games back in one of the worst divisions in Major League Baseball. This team stinks. You're not going anywhere, whether you keep these guys or trade them. So you might as well get the assets in return now instead of going ahead and continuing to build around him.
And again,
hell, if Shohei Ohtani wants to sign with the Angels, I think they should have conversations today about signing Shohei Ohtani long term.
And again, the difference in this is the Angels, I do believe the sentiment of you get into the playoffs and anything can happen because I have Shohei Ohtani. The Cardinals get into the playoffs. I don't believe that because your team has not been good all season long.
And somebody says that you missed the point there. Anything that the Angels or Cardinals get will not be better than what they already have. So trade them, still lose this year and all upcoming years. Well, that's pretty defeatist, but I would also add, I think the Cardinals are moving on from Jordan Montgomery in the offseason.
Same with Jack Flaherty.
If they're moving on from him, then get assets in return. I think the Cardinals should move on from Jack Flaherty in the offseason because I think a change of scenery would be good for both sides of things there. So get whatever you can in return that's better than a second-round draft pick that you would get if you qualifying offered him. Jordan Hicks, my opinion on that one's very simple. I just wouldn't give multi-year guaranteed deals of $10+ million to a reliever. Full stop. I don't care who you are. I'm not making that kind of a deal for them. So that's why I would trade Jordan Hicks instead of re-signing him. He's a little bit of a different conversation than any of the other guys that we've mentioned here.
Yeah, I understand where you guys are coming from. I still just look at it as Ohtani as I'm doing what's best for the organization in the long term. I think in the short term, it makes sense to keep him. I think long term, it's better to move him in a team that I just don't believe can make the playoffs, and that's where I stand. And I would have dealt Ohtani. I would have done it.
Would you have dealt Ohtani prior to this year though? Because that's when you actually would have got a more significant
last
return.
Offseason,
last deadline or last offseason.
I would have listened to it. I think they messed up by deciding not to hold on to it. But I could see where they were going. Where you know what? Let's go one more offseason here because they were playing well before they dealt with injuries, and that's what also makes it tough on the Angels right now. Is like I'm looking at their lineup today. But like they're missing Trout, who had a weird injury that came back and hurt him. If Trout was coming back next week, I think the conversation is a little bit different. We're not talking about seeing Trout till like mid-September, and now we're still gambling on Ohtani and him being able to carry us into the playoffs with the moves that we add. They just don't have enough depth. I don't mind if they decided to hold on to him going into this year. You go one more final run, but the point that they're at right now, I think they needed to sell him.
Coming up next, it is time for T-Bone's favorite segment of the week. Believe it or not, you guys send in your text. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Believe it or not is coming up next. You can watch us live on YouTube on 101 ESPN.
All right, my goal is for us to be so good we get copyright on YouTube.
Oh, jeez.
Chill.
Because the YouTube audience can't hear that. Believe it or not, I'm walking on air. I never thought I could feel so
Free.
Flying away on a wing and a prayer.
Who could it be?
Believe it or not, it's just me.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text
Just 'cause I
line
was sitting down.
for Believe It or Not. You give us a scenario. We'll tell you if we are believing it. T-Bone said, I've got a great Believe It or Not. You guys aren't even. It's going to knock your socks off. T-Bone, what do you got for Believe It or Not?
So we were just talking about...
I needed to take two there, right?
We were just talking about
Keep it
Shohei
rolling.
Ohtani and whether the Angels should trade him or not. Believe it or not, if Doug Armstrong was running the Angels, he would have traded Shohei Ohtani at the deadline.
Not.
Oh, wow.
If they're still in it, Doug Armstrong absolutely would have been doing what the Angels are doing right now.
Doug would pay.
Yeah.
Doug would pay that man.
100%.
I think he would move him because I think he'd look at the long term of the franchise, and I think he would look at it and say, are we really a playoff contender? Because you could make the argument the Blues were in the same conversation last year.
Not like this.
After their losing streak.
Not with those people.
Yeah,
not
I
with
think
those
so.
pieces.
And not with one of the greatest, like Shohei Ohtani is playing as well as he ever has before.
I get it, but he's
Ryan
the only
O'Reilly
guy.
wasn't that guy.
He's the only guy on that
Shohei
roster.
Ohtani is like
I disagree with that.
Shohei Ohtani is like if like Doug Armstrong was the GM of the Calgary Flames with Matthew Tkachuk, he would have done exactly what the Calgary Flames did.
Yeah.
Held on to him all season until he was a free agent, did their best, and when he said he's leaving, say, all right, screw it. Got to trade him.
But can't it be said that this is almost the same as what Ohtani's doing? I guess that was an off season. You don't know
you
that
held on
Ohtani's
to him
going
in
to
the
re-sign.
Well, I would argue that Gaudreau was the comparison here with Ohtani because he's the one that they played it out and then got to free agency.
Either one of them, but
whereas Tkachuk they traded the year early. That would be like the offseason. We can start having the Mike Trout conversations maybe, but Ohtani is the Gaudreau where you play it out and you try to win right now while you have the
And
opportunity.
I think 29 other teams would be doing that exact same thing right now if Ohtani was on their team and the Angels were in the same position.
But he would not have paid him.
Doug wouldn't have?
Doug would not have paid Shohei Ohtani.
He had a no move.
Yeah, no movement clause. Yeah, I guess I agree
There
with
would have
that.
been too much that was involved with it. So that is where I would I'm going one step behind where Alex is, but one step ahead of where T-Bone
I think he would have tried to re-sign that player, though, because I think an ownership would have said, we can't let that player leave.
Okay, well, I guess if you throw the ownership aspect into it, then yeah. But
Somebody just texted and said Army traded Shattenkirk.
Yeah, same thing.
What are you doing, guys?
That's what I'm saying. It truly was the same thing.
It's not the same
He
thing.
let David Backus walk. That's like letting Shohei
Look,
walk.
everybody loved Shat Deuces, but we don't need to say it's the same thing.
I think he would have traded him. I really do. I think he would have pulled the trigger and said, I'm not going to do it, because I think he wouldn't give him the contract, to BK's point. I don't think he would pay Ohtani, because I think the way that Ohtani's going to get paid, he's going to get paid like $300 million for a bat, $300 million for a pitcher.
But I don't think that's an Army decision. I think that's an ownership decision. If an ownership says you can't let that guy walk, then the GM's going to give him everything he wants.
I get it, but when I asked the question, I was just going off of kind of the MO of what Army was at.
Get out the spray bottle. T-Bone deserved it. He just earned it there.
No, I did not deserve that.
Yeah, that was ridiculous. You were the one that told us, this one's going to knock your socks off.
I thought it was a good
Or as
question.
BK said, it's going to...
I think BK deserves a squirt on that.
Knock your socks off.
Yeah.
He didn't trade Petro.
Yeah, but he let him walk for nothing.
And Petro is closer to the Ohtani than Shattenkirk, ladies and gentlemen.
I would assume so. All right, 314.
Shatty is clearly the hockey equivalent to Ohtani.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line for Believe It or Not. Guys, believe it or not, the Cardinals trade Hicks, Montgomery, and Flaherty.
That did knock my socks off.
Neither did yours. I'm not going to believe this one.
I think one of them still.
I think one of those three is going to be here, and I would say it's probably going to be Hicks over Flaherty.
Yeah, I'm not going to believe it because I think Hicks is going to be back. Although I do find it interesting that since the report came out, we haven't heard anything more on
And
the Jordan
everybody
Hicks
was in
extension.
Arizona to try and get it done.
Yeah, so I'm a little surprised that we haven't seen an official announcement on that.
Still time.
But I'm not going to believe it.
Maybe both Hicks and Flaherty said, this team's not good enough. We got to go.
Yeah, I want the hell out of here. Don't sign that deal. No, I'm not going to believe it. I think Hicks will be the one that re-signs. I'm not convinced on the Jack Flaherty front.
I think we're all on the same page there.
Believe it or not, if you were running a Major League Baseball organization, you'd have it as a championship contender within 5 years.
I'll believe it. I 100% believe that I would be a championship level.
Did you see how fast both of you guys answered? I believe it too.
Yeah.
I would 100% believe I would be a good baseball GM. Now, which is why I would fail. Yeah. Because I would believe in all of my moves. I would be like, there's no chance this fails. For example, I would have signed Carlos Correa.
I was just going to say that. No chance.
I would have signed Cody Bellinger, and that would have looked great.
You also would have had Wilson Contreras. I would have had Sean Murphy.
I would have had Tucker Barnhart.
Yeah, people.
That's the same thing.
The prince that was promised right here.
I think I'd be a better hockey general manager than a baseball one.
I actually think I would be a better hockey GM than a baseball one as well, because I would just listen to all of my hockey people.
I thought he was about to say, I think I would be a better hockey GM than Alex, and I wasn't about to spray him. I was about to throw a right hook.
It's going to be the first time that we've had a legitimate fight.
And you know what? Room. YouTube is on, so people get to see it.
YouTube would go, why did BK's camera go black? Well,
they didn't. BK went.
We had to cut.
I thought he was going to say it. I was about to lose.
It felt like a BK move.
I would be better hockey GM than Alex.
Would have been better too, because he probably would have looked you in the eye when he said it.
No, he never looks people in the eye.
Oh.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for
BK would totally wear a bow tie and speak in a condescending tone with questions.
Well, I've already got half of that ready to go. The condescending tone I have mastered. Now it's just about the bow tie. And I
can't do a bow tie, man.
I don't have the confidence for it.
I don't have the time to figure out how to tie it. It takes a lot to do a bow tie.
I would just get a clip-on.
I typically would just.
That's what my buddy had bow ties for his wedding. It was the clip-on rental thing.
I would just do the bow tie and leave it untied and make it look like I've just worked really hard.
See, that's the best part about a wedding. Like the people that can pull it off and have the confidence to do it. When you've got the half-tied bow tie at the end of the night and it's just kind of dangling. That's a good look.
Yeah,
that's
you look good, man.
It's a whole vibe.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, this comes from the text line, not me. 618 says Snell or Nola signs with the Cardinals. Believe it or not. At least one of those two.
I'm not going to believe it.
Nola.
I'm not going to believe it because I just think those are going to be too pricey for the Cardinals.
I'm not going to believe it either, because if they are quote unquote terrified about the idea of having 3 open spots in the rotation, which is forcing them into potentially re-sign Jack Flaherty, tells me the model hasn't changed. And for them to go sign a Snell or Nola, their model's going to have to change. They're going to have to be willing to spend years and dollars on those top-end starters, so I'm not going to believe it.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. I'm not going to believe it either. I do not think that they will sign one of those two. I think that we have kind of nailed down what they're probably going to be bidding in. I think they go with a second-tier pitching market, which is what they always...
Steven Matz, ladies and gentlemen.
I think higher than that, but lower than...
Mike Leake, ladies and gentlemen.
Kind of.
Think like the Sonny Gray, Cobb, Heaney, that range of pitcher.
They could convince me.
From the 636.
If they get Sonny Gray and Andrew Heaney and James Paxton, your reaction for the rotation next year is what?
I am so done with this.
I could run a baseball organization because that's what I might have done. Jesus. That might be my true reaction, but no, I think you're still missing that top guy. Because, like, as good as Sonny Gray is, he's not a guy that when you... I can't remember. I think it was BT said this like a year ago. When you look at the Cardinals rotation, there's not a guy where you go, oh, bleep, we've got to face him. You might go, oh, it's Sonny Gray. But you're not afraid of him.
Guys, the lineup game is coming up on the fast lane. I don't want to ruin anything for you. So if you are going to be listening to that and you want to play along with them, for the next 10 seconds, turn your radio down and then turn it back up here 10 seconds from now. All right? 3, 2, 1,
That wasn't 10
go.
seconds.
Taylor Motter's in the lineup again tonight, guys.
Yes!
Okay,
oh, my. I just saw where he's playing.
Let's see what...
Oh, my.
Oh, no.
They're converting.
Oh, no. Tell me he's not an outfielder today.
Oh, no. It's worse.
Oh, my God. Is he shortstop?
Yeah.
Oh, bleep. Oh, no.
I told you this is why they called him up, because they wanted him after the trade deadline. This is not a bold prediction. This will happen. The Cardinals will start Taylor Motter at shortstop, and Mason Wynn will continue playing in AAA.
You know
that will 100%
Cardinals
happen.
Nation, please hear me now. If that happens, please start a chant at every Cardinal game that you attend that we want Win. Please.
Guys, because Tommy Edman's going to be playing in center field, and so Taylor Motter will continue playing shortstop.
Do you guys know that scene in The Office where Dwight tries to teach everybody about the fire drill and he throws a cigarette in a gasoline-lit trash can, lights a fire? that's what Ollie's doing with this lineup right
On
now.
the plus side, Jordan Walker's back in the lineup.
Oh, where's he playing? First base?
Nope, right field.
It's not even top 5.
Hey, we're allowing the lineup game to still continue.
Yeah, I know, but I can still complain about where he's
Tanner is
positioned.
very upset.
Come on, Ollie.
I can't freaking believe Taylor Motter is a shortstop today. I cannot believe it.
No Newt Bar.
Oh, he's traded.
I'm actually shocked. I guess they really needed DeYoung to get a day off, I guess, because I'm actually shocked.
Oh, really? Is he overworked?
Well, I'm surprised that I see Gorman in the lineup.
Unless there's a trade that's like in the works right now.
Or they're signing a contract
that is pure
extension.
speculation by me.
Or they're signing a contract extension and they need him for a press conference.
He's got to get the physical ready to go.
Wouldn't surprise me if he's got a 5-year extension on the table to keep him as shortstop of the future.
He's getting ready for his presser because we
Mason
picked up
wins
that
the
option.
second baseman because they're going to trade Nolan Gorman.
I love the Cardinals.
I love this.
You remember when somebody said that the lineup actually doesn't matter?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a falsity too.
Well, the players that are in the lineup matters. The order in which they hit matters less than we think. It matters a little bit, but less than we think.
All right, Motter lead off against a
So
lefty.
Jordan Walker hitting eighth is just a really good thing for this team to do.
Well, they're not batting him eighth.
Oh, he moved up in the lineup, huh?
Seventh, sixth.
Jesus.
He's got to hit ahead of Gorman.
Let's talk about why the Blues are going to win a Stanley Cup next year.
Coming up next.
Just calm down.
I looked up something yesterday, Alex, last night, that legitimately surprised me as to how long it's been since this has happened for the Cardinals. We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. The Cardinals beat the Arizona Diamondbacks yesterday 11-7 as they take 2 of 3 from Arizona. They start a 4-game set against the Chicago Cubs tonight. 6:45 will be first pitch. Justin Steele on the mound for Chicago. Miles Michaelis will get the start for the St. Louis Cardinals. The Sports Center update was brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
We're right back to more of it. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN.
That's Tanner Hendrickson, and I'm Brandon Kiley. Something Jack Flaherty said after the game yesterday made me wonder about the Cardinals' future. Because Jack Flaherty was asked about how he's going to remember his time in St. Louis and what he remembers most fondly about the fact that he played for this specific organization. Derek Gould wrote this today in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. He had the quote from Flaherty. He said, quote, "St. Louis is a storied franchise. You've been around a bunch of great guys, not just the guys that are here, but the guys who came before us. They always end up coming back. Gibby, Ozzie, Willie's still a coach. Those guys come back. Izzy, being around Waino, Yachty, Albert came back. It was a special thing to be here." That's what Jack Flaherty said yesterday as he reflected on his time here in St. Louis. Think about the names that he mentioned there. Gibby, Ozzie, Willie, Waino, Yachty, Albert. They all have something in common. They all won a championship here. Alex, I looked this up last night because I was like, you know what? Waino's retiring. They don't have anybody currently on the roster for 2024 that won a championship while in St. Louis. Not a single player has done that. When was the last time that was the case for the Cardinals? So I looked it up. From 2012 to 2023, they had Waino. From 2004 to 2011, they had Albert. Now, there's others, of course, but I'm just having at least one is really the point here. From 97 to 99, they had Willie. From 82 to 96, you had Ozzie. From 1975 to 79, you had Lou. From 68 to 75, you had Gibby. So since 1968, the only years that the St. Louis Cardinals have gone without having a single player on the active roster that at some point prior to that season had won a championship while in a Cardinals uniform, 1980, 1981, and then 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003. That's it. 6 years since 1968 has this organization gone into a season without a single active player having won a championship previously in that uniform. That matters. The fact that you no longer have the Yachty, the Waino, the Albert, the Carpenter, the Willie, the Ozzie, the Lou, the Gibby, whoever Izzy. The fact that you don't have that guy in uniform anymore, that is something that I don't know how much value it has, but it has value. And it's something that is missing now because the Cardinals' identity as an organization, Alex, for 50 years has been, we win titles here. This is a championship organization. When Ollie was hired, the first thing he said, it is a championship mentality and we go to the World Series or it is a failure or a disappointment of a season. So when I look at where this Cardinals team is at right now, where they're at organizationally, T-Bone, that's no longer who they are. They are no longer the championship pedigree team. Yeah. That's the Astros. That's the Dodgers. Those are the teams that now get labeled as that.
Yeah, now you don't have someone in that locker room that tells you, hey, this is what it takes to get not just to October, but through October. And I agree with you. That does matter. That does matter to have somebody in an organization that has been there and done that before. And not only just been there and done that before in the World Series, but also in October as well and had success in October. Because you look at the roster now, there's not a lot of guys that you can point to that have had success in a Cardinals uniform in October. Outside of Adam Wainwright, Paul Goldschmidt got to the NLCS. I think he's the only one remaining from that 19 team, unless I'm forgetting somebody. Contreras got to a World Series, but that was with the Cubs when he won that. But outside of those two guys, you don't have a lot of guys that can say, hey, this is what you need to do to make sure that you get through the season and get into October where the stage is the lights are the brightest, where it is tough to go into October and win baseball games and know what you have to do so. And not only get there, but make sure you get to the World Series and win it. So, yeah, I think this is a big thing that the Cardinals are losing when Adam Wainwright retires, is not having somebody that can say, I've been there and done that before.
Here. And doing it here. Because Contreras technically has the ring. And by the way, I should clarify, it's going to a World Series, winning a National League pennant, getting to the World Series. That's what they're missing. Albert qualifies for 04 and 05 because they went in 04. That's why I had him on this list. That's my bad. He qualifies because they won the National League pennant, not because they won the title that year. But that's what they're missing out on right now. And when you look at who they're going to be as an organization in future years, they got to get back to that, man. It's got to get back to building a roster that can contend for championships. Too often over the last 5+ years, really dating back to, I think you can say really 2015, they've built teams that had the chance to get in. I think they need to start building teams that have a chance to get through the postseason. And there is a difference in terms of how that happens. The biggest thing that they've been missing is that number one starter, and it's going to cost to be able to go get that. So I don't know that they're willing to pay the freight to get it, but when I thought about what Jack said last night in his post-game press conference when he said they're a storied franchise, and then he mentioned a bunch of guys that come back, who's the guy that comes back that has that kind of gravitas in a Cardinals uniform from this team in 2024? Unless they start doing a whole hell of a lot more winning, there isn't that guy. Coming up next, we'll hit the rewind here on 101 ESPN.
This weekend, it's a Yankees and O's weekend on ESPN.
to you by Stewart's American Mortgage. Google the Bagel Loan, featuring 0 fees and 0 closing costs.
Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. If you've missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. You can also find us on YouTube, even after the show. All of them are collected over there, so you can go back and rewatch any of the show that you may have missed at 101 ESPN. STL is the place where you go to find it. Had a great conversation earlier today with Mike Salk from Seattle Sports Radio. He's super tied in with the Mariners. Basically said, hey, if you want Logan Gilbert, you're going to be giving up like a Paul Goldschmidt level of trade asset. Not Nolan Gorman, not Lars Nootbaar, not Brendan Donovan. That is just a starting point, one of those three. You might even need to include 2 of those 3 in order to get a guy like Logan Gilbert. But he did say that Seattle's at least listening on their young starters. And then we had John Denton on the show as well to talk about everything going on with the Cardinals as they lead into the trade deadline. Alex, the final thing that I wanted to get to with you today is leading into today's game and really what we're watching for the rest of the season. What do you want to see between now and the end of the year that would give you more confidence than you currently have in the Cardinals for 2024? And I'm talking on-field performance. Take a set aside for a moment the off-field decisions of who's going, who's coming. Just the on-field, what does the play look like that gives you more confidence for 2024?
I don't honestly think there's anything that makes me feel optimistic about 2024 in terms of on-field.
That you haven't seen yet.
That I haven't seen. Like, I know this offense is great, and I know your pitching staff needs help. That's all going to be taken care of in the offseason and potentially the trade deadline. If there's one area, though, that I'd like to see that does give me hope, start giving these younger guys reps. Call Mason Wynn up the moment the trade deadline is done for the next game. Bring up some of these young pitchers that you're expecting to compete for a number 5 spot. Show me that you have the depth that you're telling me that you have, so that when you go into the offseason and you underwhelm by a lot, I at least saw what you're trying to sell me as going to be competitive with our team in 2024. Because if you just run it back after the trade deadline and put Taylor Motter at shortstop and put Alec Burleson in the outfield and Juan Yepez, like, I've seen that already. Show me what else you've got. Otherwise, I'm going to be underwhelmed and very skeptic going into 2024.
I think the one thing for me that I really want to see is whether it be a young arm that's in the system or a cost control arm they acquire at the deadline that comes in and kind of earns his spot and can be penned into 2024. Because I think there's guys like McGreevy, Graceffo. I think their ceilings are like 4 or 5 starters. But if you have one of those guys that you call up after the deadline when you free up spots by trading Jack and Monty, and they can pitch well, and you go, you know what? This guy's going to be making league minimum. I think we can at least pen him in as the number 5 starter. It frees up so much more that you're able to do in the offseason. So that's one thing that I want to see. Whether it's an arm in the system like Graceffo or McGreevy, it's probably not going to be Hintz. He's too far away. But I think McGreevy, Graceffo have a shot to earn one of those spots. Hell, even Liberatore. If he gets enough starts, he could be the guy that we change your mind on.
That's who I was going to bring up. I think it's one of those 3. McGreevy, Graceffo, Liberatore, or again, whoever you bring in via trade, one of the young arms that you acquire. If it's the Beater, is that his name, from the Yankees? Whoever it is, one of those guys hopefully gets real opportunity down the stretch, whoever they believe in the most, to start every 5th day. Don't even mess with it. Don't like, hey, they're going to start here and then we're going to go with the other. No, bet on one. Who do you think is the most ready to be a major league starter right now, and give them the runway. Let's see what it looks like. And if it fails, so be it. At least now you know. You gave them 6, 7, 8 starts down the stretch to find out what they can do against major league quality hitters. Let's find out what that is. So that would be my number 1 thing, is finding one of those young guys that can help you for 24. Mason Wynn is number 2 on this list. And number 3 for me would be Tommy Edman in center field. If they genuinely believe that he is their future center fielder, I want to see it for a month and a half. I want to see it for 6 straight weeks of Tommy Edman going out there and being a starting center fielder for this team. What does it look like? Is it still as good defensively as it was for the brief stretch that we saw? And what does the offense look like? Because it's something that hasn't really been discussed a whole lot this year because the offense has been so good around him. Tommy Edman has not had a very good year offensively for the Cardinals this season. He's batting .235. He's getting on base just 30% of the time, which is no surprise. He doesn't get on base at a high clip in general, and his power has not been there. He's been kind of similar to Dylan Carlson, where you know what the issues are, you know what the good stuff is. He hits lefties, he doesn't hit righties. Can he be a legitimate everyday center fielder for you? I don't know, but I think that if that's their bet, we need to see that down the stretch to find out.
Go ahead, T-Bone.
One outfielder for me, because I like what you said there with Edman. I want to see Nootbaar start showing some power. And I know that that's a tough ask because it is late in the year. You're starting to get tired. I get it. But I want to see Nootbaar start showing more of that promise that was talked about last offseason. Because to me, I think he's underlived that hype so far. And I want to see more from Lars Nootbaar.
If you want to give me optimism for 2024 of what you can show me that you don't have question marks on certain guys at their position for 2024. Clear up this, what can he be? Figure out who these guys are so that I know clear-cut what positions need to be upgraded.
Coming up next, you've got the Fast Lane here on 101 ESPN. Cardinals versus Cubs tonight. It's the final series between these two teams this season. Michaelis versus Steele. We'll talk to you guys all about it tomorrow at 11 a.m. here on 101 ESPN.